Hello and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emi Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching, typically once a week. This episode is a week late, so I'm sorry about that. I really thought I could get it out by last weekend, but it's a longer episode. This episode's probably going to be like at least 2 hours, if not longer. It's a deep dive on School Spirit Season 2. So even though I skipped a week, hopefully this will kind of be like an extra long episode, so it'll be fine. And then I'll be back to a shorter episode next week. And then somewhat soon after, I will have a Yellow Jackets deep dive. I haven't done a deep dive in a hot minute, so I think I just kind of forgot how much time it takes me to prepare. So I'm sorry about that. But now that I have a better handle on things, I think I will start the prep for my Yellow Jackets deep dive like immediately after this one's published. So hopefully I won't take too long to get that one out because I'll be working on it longer. Like I was determined to get this done by my regular time, and then I just stressed myself out and I couldn't do it. But anyways, sorry for rambling. Timestamps will be in the description for like each episode. So if you haven't seen the season and you want to like watch along with me, that would be cool. You also don't have to. This is going to be a recap deep dive, so I am going to share like plot points, but it is on season 2. So if you haven't seen season 1, you might not really know what's happening, but I'll give a brief overview. So in season 1 of School Spirits, it opens up with a girl named Maddie Nears. She is dead. Like we see her ghost. She's interacting with the other ghosts, and she doesn't know what happened to her, which is unusual because most of the time when people die, they remember how they died. She has no idea how she died. So the mystery of season 1 is like, how did she die? What the hell happened to Maddie? Maddie also can talk to her friend Simon. That's also abnormal. Typically, ghosts cannot see people. People cannot see the ghosts. So that is already abnormal, that Maddie has this ability to talk to Simon specifically. And she can talk to him in what they coin the scars of the building, which are rooms where people in the school die. Basically, all the ghosts in the school are ghosts who have died in the school. And there's a whole cast of characters of ghosts that I will give a brief overview on as they come into season 2. But basically, we find out at the end of season 1 that what happened to Maddie is that she's not actually dead. So Janet, a ghost who previously they were told had crossed over a year earlier, like when Maddie comes, they're like, Janet crossed over like a year ago. Janet was actually not, well, I was about to say dead. She was dead. She was a ghost. But she did not actually cross over when the other ghosts thought she did. She jumped into Maddie's body and is currently out there living her life as Maddie. And that answered a lot of questions from season 1 because a bunch of houses were being broken into, like a bunch of stuff had been going on, and they found out, and Simon finds out that it's Maddie. So naturally, he thinks he's going crazy and that Maddie is not actually a ghost because before Maddie remembers how she died, like it's not like Maddie's like, Janet jumped into my body from the beginning. She's like, I don't know how I died. He's trying to solve her murder. And then he's like, this is who's been breaking into houses. Like we got a photo and it's Maddie. And Maddie's like, what the fuck? And then she remembers that Janet jumped into her body and that's how she died. So Simon thinks he's going crazy, but Simon can talk to Maddie. Okay, I think that's where we picked up. If any pertinent information from season 1 comes up, I will explain as we go on. So episode 1 of season 2 of School Spirits is called Whatever Happened to Maddie Nears. So Wally and the group are trapped in the boiler room because basically when Maddie remembers that Mr. Martin was there, because basically Maddie remembers she like walked down to the boiler room, she was upset, and she hears Mr. Martin and Janet talking, and then Janet runs into Maddie. That's how she dies. So Mr. Martin knew this whole time. He also knew, obviously, that Janet had not crossed over because he told them that Janet had crossed over. And they started, the ghosts from in season 1, they started putting it together that Mr. Martin had been lying about some stuff because they found a bunch of like journals he was keeping on them. He had a bunch of stuff that they had when they died. They're like objects that they had when they died. He was collecting them for some reason. He obviously lied to them about Janet crossing over. All these things, Mr. Martin is sketchy. So he trapped them in the boiler room at the end of season 1, and we open up with them trapped in the boiler room. Maddie and Mr. Martin are outside of the boiler room having a conversation, and she's confronting him about him being there when she, quote unquote, died. And she asks why he didn't say anything. He says he couldn't stop it. And she asked what happened to her. We get a flashback of Mr. Martin and Janet arguing in the boiler room, like from their perspective. Because when season 1 ended, all we saw was like a force running into Maddie. They hadn't cast Janet yet. But we see like it from their perspective and how Maddie actually died and the force hitting her and like everything. And then Janet like leaving the room in Maddie's body. We see that whole thing. Janet leaves in Maddie's body. Maddie's soul is in the school now. And Mr. Martin runs away from Maddie's questioning, and Maddie chases after him. Funny enough, I don't know if it's because I've been watching this show and I was like rewatching it and taking notes on it, but I also recently, sorry, mini tangent, and then I'll get back to the show. I recently lost access to my family's Netflix account. I had an experience that like you're not in the household anymore thing, and it finally happened to me. And so I haven't had access to Netflix. And because I haven't had access to Netflix, I really wanted to watch something the other day, and I was like, I don't know what to watch. And normally I'd go on Netflix and I'd see like what's new, or I'd rewatch something, you know, like Gilmore Girls or something. Like I would just go to Netflix, right? But I didn't have Netflix, so I was like, well, I want to rewatch something, but I don't know what. So I started rewatching, because it's on Hulu, I started rewatching Ghost Whisperer. And that was just a very funny thing to be watching in between rewatching this and taking notes on it, because I'm like comparing the ghost worlds between this show and Ghost Whisperer. Obviously, the rules of the ghost world are different, because in School Spirits, they are tied to the place where they died, whereas in Ghost Whisperer, they're just earthbound spirits who are waiting to cross over, and like they're not haunting a specific place necessarily. They have the ability to like go wherever, and that's how they find Melinda, the Ghost Whisperer, who helps them cross over. Anyways, they really needed a Melinda in the show. Honestly, okay, also funny enough, I haven't gotten to this point in Ghost Whisperer yet, but I'm pretty sure Milo, who plays Wally, his mom is in Ghost Whisperer at some point. That's kind of funny. I just put that together. Anyways, maybe I'm wrong and she's not in Ghost Whisperer. Let me Google it. Okay, yeah, she is in Ghost Whisperer. She hasn't, I'm only a few episodes into season 1, so she hasn't made her appearance yet, but that's kind of funny now that I'm putting that together. But anyways, I started rewatching Ghost Whisperer. I'm definitely comparing and contrasting. But a funny moment, and I do remember this from Ghost Whisperer, because I have seen most of it. I don't know if I've seen all of it, because I don't think I ever watched it on a streaming platform. I would watch it like on cable TV reruns of the Ghost Whisperer. And there is later, spoiler for Ghost Whisperer, and I don't know what season this happens in, because again, I don't think I've ever rewatched it from the beginning, which has been a blast, but like to rewatch it in order from the beginning. So anyways, there is a moment, and I don't remember what season, when the main character's husband dies, and like he jumps into somebody else's body who's about to die. He's dead, the other guy's dead, and he takes over his body. Now that's not what happened with Janet, but anyways, sorry for that unnecessary tangent. So Mr. Martin runs away. Maddie chases after him. Meanwhile, Wally manages to open the door of the boiler room where he's locked, and he, Rhonda, and Charlie, the three, escape the fallout shelter, where, again, they were locked. Charlie grabs some of the notebooks and stuff that Mr. Martin had in there. Again, they found out that Mr. Martin had been keeping notes on them. Charlie grabs some of it, but every time they leave, they keep getting thrown back into their scars, which is the places where they died. Mr. Martin tells Maddie that none of them understand. It wasn't meant to be this way. Don't look further into this. Don't pursue this. And he disappears beyond the school limits. Mr. Martin is nowhere to be found. The others eventually find Maddie. They start asking questions, and she says that she now knows what happened to her. And then they cut to the theme song. So we see Simon riding his bike, clearly spiraling, because he thinks he's crazy, and that he knows Maddie's not actually dead, so he wasn't talking to her ghost. He was just having like some kind of psychotic break. And honestly, relatable. He thinks he's crazy. He's looking at the photo of Maddie in the rearview mirror over and over and over again. Janet as Maddie, so Janet, but she's in Maddie's body, is on a bus. We saw her in season 1 buying a bus ticket. Her reflection shows us Janet. It's really interesting the way they did this, where like we see Maddie, but a lot of times we also see Janet. But in like the reflection, it's Janet. Really interesting. Her reflection to us is Janet, but obviously she's viewed as Maddie. Like it cuts between, and I saw an interview with the actress who plays Maddie about how she worked with the actress who plays Janet, like in because they were kind of playing Janet together in certain instances. They like worked on like her mannerisms and making sure that it felt like that Maddie, when Janet was in Maddie's body, she was like embodying Janet, like that it felt consistent. I will say she did a great job. We get a flashback to Janet leaving in Maddie's body. She used a crowbar to escape, and Mr. Martin was chased after her, but he couldn't go past the school limits. Xavier is in the hospital because Xavier is Maddie's ex-boyfriend from season 1. He was a suspect in her murder / disappearance. He had been like cheating on her with a girl named Claire, who's a somewhat important player this season as well, who was one of Maddie's childhood best friends. Anyways, Xavier got hit by a car, and that's when they found out that Simon found out that Maddie was alive, and they found out that Maddie was who was like breaking into people's homes and stuff, because they took a photo of who was driving the truck, and it was Maddie. But Janet. So Xavier's in the hospital in critical condition because he got run over by this car. Janet hit him, but they think it's Maddie. So Xavier's in the hospital. Claire tells Nicole that Claire is the girl that he was cheating on Maddie with, who's now kind of the gang of the living people is Xavier, Maddie's ex-boyfriend, Nicole and Simon, who are Maddie's 2 best friends, and then Claire, who was Maddie's friend in childhood and then was having an affair, or was not affair, that sounds so dramatic, was cheating with her boyfriend, Maddie's boyfriend. So she was a suspect in season 1, like, is the girl who her boyfriend was cheating on, like, were they involved somehow? And they were also, like, involved. There was a teacher who was a suspect who, he comes in later, but, like, all of the mystery of, like, who killed Maddie, that's not super relevant to this season, to be honest. But I do recommend you watch season 1 if you haven't. It's a good season. But honestly, the main mysteries of season 1 are like what happened to Maddie. So a lot of the things are like, does it have to do with it? But there was like a whole side plot of like the teacher and then blackmailing a teacher and like all of these things. And I'm like, honestly, not super relevant to season 2. So sorry to them. But Claire's kind of like part of the group now. And Claire tells Nicole that they should tell the cops that it was Maddie because Maddie is missing. They don't know where Maddie is. Maddie is like, there's been a whole murder / missing persons investigation because there was blood found in the boiler room. And so they think Maddie died, but they also don't know if Maddie died. So she's been like, so basically Claire's like, we should tell the police that Maddie's alive and that she hit Xavier with the truck. And Nicole's like, we can't do that yet. We need to find her first. Claire's like, we tried to find her and look what happened, okay? Xavier is in a hospital right now. Nicole really doesn't want to ruin Maddie's life. Like, she doesn't want to throw her friend under the bus for hitting her other friend with a car, which, like, you know what? So wholesome of her. Little did she know that wasn't Maddie who hit Xavier with the truck, but, like, she doesn't know that. So she really doesn't want to ruin Maddie's life. She's like, she was running from us. She's clearly scared of something. Like, we have to find her and find out what's wrong. She's scared of you because she has no idea who the fuck you are because that's not Maddie. Anyways. And also Nicole brings up the point that they will get blamed for the blackmail and the stolen money, which Maddie kind of took the fall for in all of this because they're like, we think that's why the teacher maybe hurt Maddie because she was involved in this whole blackmail thing. So basically Nicole's like, right now she's kind of our cover. No one's gonna like, people, they might start looking if like, you know what I mean? If Maddie comes back and is like, I didn't blackmail the guy, then they might be suspects. So that is something that is brought up as well. Claire, on the other hand, isn't really giving Maddie the benefit of the doubt. She's like, we found Maddie and she came after Xavier. Like, maybe she's just trying to get revenge. She came for Xavier first. Like, maybe she'll come for me next. But they agree to wait until Xavier wakes up to do anything. At the school, Maddie tells the ghost how she died, and Rhonda is upset that Mr. Martin knew this whole time about Janet not crossing over, about Janet being in her body, like all of that. According to Wally, Mr. Martin had told them that Janet crossed over a year before she got there. And Rhonda's like, so he definitely lied because she was there and she hadn't crossed over when she ran into your body. I don't remember if in season 1, like they talked about it like, oh, Janet crossed over. When we found out that Janet jumped into Maddie's body, I thought, okay, Janet had, and maybe they left this open-ended in season 1 because they didn't know how, like maybe they didn't have it planned out of like, the explanation of Janet had it. Like, I'm sure they knew in season 1, like, Janet didn't actually cross over. Janet's in Maddie's body. Like, I'm sure they knew that from the beginning. But I wonder if they had in mind the whole way of like what we find out happened to Janet in that year that the rest of the ghosts thought that she had crossed over, which I'll get to later. We don't know yet until like Janet explains more. But like I wonder if they had that in mind, or because when we found out that Janet jumped into Maddie's body, I was like, okay, that's probably when the rest of them were told that Janet had crossed over. But no, Janet had been trapped or like hidden for like a year before Maddie arrived. So they thought Janet crossed over long before Maddie even showed up. So, which I guess makes sense, because maybe they would be like, well, Janet crossed over at the same time you did. That's kind of suspicious. Although that's not why Mr. Martin lied. He lied about her crossing over for a year before Maddie even died. Anyways, sorry. Rhonda's really mad Rhonda's one of the ghosts. So basically the people in the ghost world, there's Rhonda, who got murdered by her guidance counselor. There's Wally, who died on the football field. He died in the 80s. Rhonda died, I don't know, the 60s? I don't know. Then Charlie, who died in the 90s. He had a peanut allergy and he didn't have his EpiPen and he went into anaphylactic shock and died. He's also gay, and there was a big plot line in season 1 of his ex-boyfriend, who, like, they were secret, obviously, because they were closeted-ish. I don't remember, actually. But, like, it wasn't, like, super acceptable for them to be gay. So his boyfriend from when he was in high school, Emilio, is now a teacher at the school. And Maddie talked to Simon, and, like, they wrote a letter to give to Emilio, who, a funny little tidbit, is played by adult Travis. Like, adult Emilio is played by adult Travis from Yellow Jackets. I was like, he has a thing for just playing adult counterparts of the characters we see the teenage version of. So yeah, those are, I think, the 3 main ghosts. Then there was a ghost named Dawn, who wasn't really part of the group. Basically, there's like a ghost support group. Mr. Martin was the head of it. And then there are some ghosts who are kind of like looping, I think is what they call it, where they are not super present. Dawn was an interesting character because I don't really feel like she was looping. She just kind of kept to her own. But basically, we have the main ghosts, and then there are ghosts that aren't super involved, but are still there dead in the school. Mr. Martin is nowhere to be found. Wally looked up and down the school, like they've looked, they cannot find Mr. Martin literally anywhere. They don't know where he is. Wally brings up what Dawn used to talk about, which is a walk-in, about like when you're really emotional, being susceptible to, like, a human being is really emotional, being susceptible to like spirits or negative spirits walking in. So maybe that's what, like, he's connecting that to what happened to Maddie. Like, Maddie was really distraught, so she opened herself up to a spirit going into her, basically. Charlie shows Maddie the notebooks that they had found of Mr. Martin, keeping notes on them. And Rhonda mentions the things they had when they died and how Mr. Martin was also collecting that. Maddie sends Charlie and Wally off to find the mementos, like the rest of their objects, and she and Rhonda are off to look further for Mr. Martin. Janet, as Maddie, is at a rest stop, and I loved the way we see, you know, all those jokes of like a little, like if like an alien came down on Earth. It's like she's a teenager from the 1950s who is now in like a modern, like, she's at a rest stop and she asks if there's a way to call a taxi, and the cashier's like, you could use an app, and she's like, no idea what the lady's talking about. So like things like that I thought were I think are interesting, of like Janet not really knowing, like she's not acting like a typical teenager because she hasn't lived in the real world in decades. I thought that was super interesting. And also Maddie's missing poster is still on the wall, but it's kind of like covered by other posters because it's been a while, and that kind of freaks Janet out because obviously she is in Maddie's body, so she like doesn't want to be caught, and she grabs a map of Bingham County before she leaves the rest stop. Rhonda and Maddie can't find Mr. Martin anywhere, and Rhonda's really, really angry. Like, Rhonda, the first few episodes of this season, I feel like her main arc is like really, really being frustrated by the whole Mr. Martin thing. She was killed by her guidance counselor, so it's understandable that being betrayed by another not authority figure would be especially upsetting. Like, they all had different reactions to it. Wally also deals with it and what that meant to him. Like, it was very, very jarring for them to find out that this person who had been coaching that, like, counseling them and supporting them in the afterlife for years and years and years was maybe deceiving them. Like, that was really hard for them to find out. Wally and Charlie can't get into the fallout shelter. The door should have reset by now, but it hasn't. And this, I think, is one of the first things. Basically, there are like rules in the ghost world that we are introduced to in season 1. Things reset. So the ghosts can grab anything. Like they can rip a poster off the wall, but in the real world, it's not being crumpled. So eventually, if they see the poster goes back to normal, that kind of thing. So like there are kind of standards and like things like that. And this is kind of a beginning of like things not really being the way they are. We get a hint of that in season 1 with like Simon being able to talk to Maddie. We find out that when Maddie died, it was because she heard Mr. Martin and Janet, and she was kind of like in between. Like there's a lot of like disrupting of the status quo of the ghost world that I think is hinting to something being wrong, obviously. So the fallout, they can't open the door. It hasn't like opened up again, and like it hasn't reset. And all the ghosts are fighting. Like there's a lot of tension. Rhonda is mad that Charlie and Wally butted in because she was trying to figure out what was up with Mr. Martin. And then Charlie's like, you could have asked us for help. Like, why were you doing it alone? Rhonda is then mad that Charlie only got his journals from the fallout shelter. And then Charlie is like, we need a living person to open it. And then he suggests Simon because Maddie can talk to a living person, Simon. And Maddie's like, that might be harder than it sounds. And she's right because he thinks he's crazy. The next day at school, Simon is like really struggling because he is like thinking he's crazy, obviously. So anytime Maddie like starts speaking to him, he like turns his headphones up more. He's trying to like drown out Maddie's voice because he's convinced that it's something he's hearing and obviously like not her ghost because he knows that she's alive, so how would it be her ghost? He really thinks he's going crazy. Maddie's trying, but they're not getting anywhere. Wally and Maddie have a conversation. Wally's upset. He feels like everything's changed. He's like, nothing ever changed before you got here. Now everything's different. And Wally, similar to like Rhonda's frustration, is mad that he trusted Mr. Martin to the extent that he did. And then he also realizes, he's like, does this mean that you could go back to your life, like go back into your body? And if you could, like, would you? And Maddie's like, I don't really know what any of this means. At the hospital, Xavier is stable, but still unconscious. Claire's mom and stepdad are pissed off at her because her parents like own a bunch of properties, and the property where Maddie was staying, where they then found Maddie, and then Janet, where Janet was staying as Maddie, Janet hit Xavier with a truck. It was outside that house. So like Claire's parents are really mad at her for being there. Nicole is concerned that she said something about the whole Maddie thing. Xavier's dad is determined to track down whoever did this to his son. They found the truck, which was abandoned. And Nicole obviously like doesn't want Maddie to be found out for this. Simon goes to the principal and he tells him that he needs his schedule changed and he wants to eat in his car. He's not allowed to eat in his car, but he can eat in the greenhouse. And the principal will change his schedule. Basically, he's trying to make sure he's nowhere where somebody died, which is the places where Maddie can talk to him. So he's trying to avoid all the places where Maddie can reach him. Rhonda's losing it, yelling at the band kids who are in a trance. And one of them does snap out of it. We meet her later, but one of them does kind of stop playing their instrument. Because the band kids, it was like a group of their bus crashed before they left for like a big performance championship. I don't know. And they're basically what they call looping, where they're just like in a trance, not really engaging with the world, just playing their instruments over and over and over again. But Rhonda's mad. She yells at them, and one of them does snap out of it. Rhonda and Maddie then have a conversation about why Rhonda's so upset. She feels like this is her fault. She feels like she didn't learn her lesson about trusting authority figures. And then she reveals to Maddie that on the night of homecoming, she saw Maddie and Wally kiss, and she was happy for them, but also really sad. She felt really alone, and she went to see Mr. Martin, and he had her acceptance letter to Berkeley, which she hadn't seen since she died. He says that it's complex methods of research and that she should just trust him. But she was desperate, and she thought if she gave him something, he would explain more why he had this and like what he was doing with it. And so she told him that Maddie and Simon had been communicating. And she followed him to the fallout shelter and found her letter and all the other objects. And she feels sorry for stabbing Maddie in the back. Maddie says, going forward, no more lies and secrets. We have to trust each other. So we know that Mr. Martin is clued into, which makes sense, I guess, why he would then freak out about, like, I have a lot of questions, and they're not really answered. And I don't want to like spoil things because we get reveals as this season goes on. But I have a lot of questions about like the ghost world in general. Because an interesting detail, Mr. Martin and Janet were the first people to die at the school that we know of. Obviously, there are the ghosts that are like looping. Maybe there's some ghost in a trance. But like from the information we get, Mr. Martin and Janet died, and they were the first ghosts there, and they were the only ghosts there for a few years, and then more people started dying at the school. And I don't know if this is accurate, but I have a hypothesis. I have an idea that like, and he says something like literally in the finale. So like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But like, there is something more going on about all these ghosts dying, like, and being like, there's something there. I don't know. I'll get to it because I have more thoughts and I don't want to like reveal things, but like it feels like there is more to why he freaked out about this. Anyways, let me just keep going. Claire and Nicole are at a payphone calling to find out if Maddie got on that bus, and they can't. Nicole, meanwhile, is also trying to reach Simon, and he's not responding to her. Janet arrives to like a rural town that is in Bingham County, but that's all we know about the town for now. Claire reveals, then they cut back to the Claire and Nicole at a payphone. Claire reveals that the bus did a head count, and they noticed that somebody got off at a town in Bingham County, Rockton. And so they're like, okay, maybe that's where Maddie is. Janet, but they don't know it's Janet. Maddie is still trying to reach Simon, like talk to him, and he's still ignoring her. Wally's there and says that it's time for a group and he doesn't know where else to go. Charlie, meanwhile, is reading Mr. Martin's notes on him, upset about the way he's been written about. And in Mr. Martin's bag, which is one of the things that Charlie got as they were leaving the shelter, Wally finds a piece of paper in Mr. Martin's bag and realizes it's an overlay of the map in the school. It's like a translucent-ish piece of paper. I don't know what those are called. It's like a paper like that and has a bunch of like X's. And Wally realizes that it's an overlay of the map because he was looking at the map earlier at the school. So he realizes that the little red dots are like indicating where people died, the scars of the school as we've come to know them. And they find out that somebody died in the greenhouse, which is where Simon is going to start eating lunch, and also somewhere that he doesn't know is a scar of the school. Therefore, it's somewhere Maddie can reach him and he'll be caught off guard. So their goal is to make that count, right? She's going to go to him at lunch and she's going to appeal to him, and she needs to make it count because when he finds out that she can talk to him there, like, then he won't engage as honestly, right? Like all the other places in the school, maybe Maddie will reach him. He has his headphones in, he's ignoring her. The greenhouse, she can catch him off guard. Simon is eating lunch and Maddie tells him that he couldn't have known everything about Mr. Anderson without her. Like she tries to appeal to him, but he's not listening. And Wally's like, try something else. And then there's a really beautiful scene where Maddie brings up her dad's funeral and Simon waiting outside for her. And Simon doesn't believe her, but she's like, look up Janet Hamilton. Okay, look up Janet Hamilton. Like, I'm not crazy. She's in my body. Look up Janet Hamilton. Nicole arrives at the greenhouse and tells Simon that Claire wants to go to the cops and they need to calm her down. Maddie is trying to tell him that it wasn't her, it was Janet, like, it wasn't me, I wouldn't, because Nicole's like, Claire wants to turn Maddie in, but like, there had to be a good reason why she did that. And Maddie, meanwhile, is trying to tell Simon, like, it wasn't me, that's why she did that. Simon is like, turn her in, because he is really just like, she's not dead, she's not dead. I'm just hearing things, turn her in. It was Maddie, turn her in. Maddie at this point is sure that she can't do anything. She's lost Simon. Janet arrives at an old abandoned farmhouse and we get a flashback to her time there. It was her grandma's house and her grandma really encouraged her to pursue science. She gave her a lab coat that said her name on it. She said to her that her parents may not be supportive, but she always will be. We see Janet at the graveyard. She sees her grandmother and her father's tombstone and then her own grave. Simon gives Emilio, Charlie's ex, his test because he's now his English teacher, or I don't know what he teaches actually. He gives him a test that he was making up, and Emilio thanks him for the letter he gave him on homecoming, which again is something that how would Simon have known to write that kind of letter that would be accurate. You know, like all these things where it's like, how would he have known that? So that's something he has in mind. Things are starting to come together, right? Maybe Simon's like, okay, yeah, there are things that I wouldn't know. Janet, meanwhile, digs up her own grave. We see Simon in his car. He Googles Janet Hamilton. Maddie, at this point, feels defeated. Charlie feels judged by the notes. Wally feels like he did the wrong play again. And Rhonda's like, we still don't know where Mr. Martin is. They're all just upset about different things. Maddie's like, where the hell is my body? Simon comes into the cafeteria. And I loved this scene. Like, this was genuinely one of the highlights. He talks about how Maddie messed up a detail when she was describing like what he wore and him waiting outside her house at her dad's funeral. And he says, and I wrote this down verbatim, I think about that day so much. And if you were just in my head, you would have gotten it right. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. That was so beautiful. He wants to help. He opens the door for them. They notice marks on the wall and they think it was Janet marking the days that she was locked in there. We see Janet lie in her grave and the episode ends with Xavier in the hospital. He begins to flatline. We see his spirit kind of walk. Well, first we see him like walk and he sees a bunch of weird looking people, like some in all different kinds of garb, right? And he's clearly like, I thought he was dead. I was like, okay, Xavier's dead and now we're going to have a whole other cast of characters of people who died in the hospital. His body, meanwhile, begins to crash and he sees his body because at first he doesn't realize, he just starts walking and I think he doesn't realize that he's dying. But then he goes back, there's somebody smoking. There's a fisherman who says, are you going to stay? Like, welcome to the waiting room. Are you going to stay? He's obviously like confused. He goes back to his room and he sees his body and it's starting to crash. But the episode ends with him waking up. So his soul went back into his body. They revive him and he does not die. But he did for a little minute there where he was able to see the ghosts, right? Episode 2 is called Field of Screams. Janet is in her grave. She sees Mr. Martin and wakes up. Like, she has a vision of Mr. Martin and wakes up. She goes inside the house, makes do with the canned food there and lights a bunch of candles. And we get a flashback to Janet's dad getting mad that she wants to go to college. Like, she has a brochure and he's like, what the hell is this? And he gets mad and hits her and burns her college pamphlet. At school, Rhonda is still upset. Again, Rhonda's upset for like the first few episodes of the season. Wally says that the focus should be on Maddie, and Rhonda's like, at least Maddie's body is out there. And then she says, the rest of us, lab rats, have nothing but the cryptic scribblings of a devious chemistry teacher. Charlie is like, you were swapping information with him. And Maddie's like, stop fighting, okay? We need to put this energy into finding out where my body is and where the hell Mr. Martin went. Wally tries to come up with a game plan. Then the band person who snapped out of things, Quinn, joins them in the room. Back at the hospital, Xavier has made a remarkable recovery. And Nicole is worried that Simon went to the cops because she hasn't been able to reach him. And Claire's like, we'll have to eventually. They inform Xavier that Maddie's the one who stole his truck. He doesn't know any of this because he was just zonked out after they realized that. And Simon is like, well, yes and no. He tries to explain that Maddie's spirit is trapped in the school and Janet is in her body. They think he's low-key crazy, but Xavier, having just connected with the spirit world, isn't immediately shutting it down. He's asking more questions. He's intrigued because he himself now knows ghosts are real. I almost died. I saw ghosts, right? So he's like, tell me more. Maddie's a ghost. You've been speaking to her ghost, which is so funny. I really like the detail of Xavier, like, dying and having that connection and being kind of in Simon's corner. So Simon had somebody who wasn't immediately shutting him down as crazy, you know? I really liked that minor detail. When we saw Xavier like begin to flatline and I thought he was gonna die, I was a little bit like, okay, now what? We're gonna have a whole other plot line of him and the ghosts in the hospital. I don't give a fuck about that. But I really like the way they did it, of him connecting enough to believe Simon but still being alive. I liked that. I thought that was really great detail. Nicole and Claire think he's crazy, but Xavier isn't shutting him down. The ghosts, the gang of ghosts, explains things to the band ghost, her name is Quinn, and they decide they need to speak to Yuri, who died in the greenhouse. Apparently he only speaks Russian. He's a foreign exchange student and he only speaks Russian, so they've never been able to have a conversation with him. Which, like, I don't know if this is true, But, like, wouldn't he have been able to learn English in the many years since he died? Maybe not. Anyways, Xavier is being discharged at the hospital, but he's clearly freaked out about seeing ghosts. He tries to ask, like, a nurse about, like, the other people that were in the waiting room, and she's like, and he's like, there was somebody smoking, and she's like, people haven't been able to smoke here since, like, 19, whatever. I don't know what year she said, but, like, basically confirming to him, okay, there are ghosts. I saw ghosts. They try, I think, honestly, the fact that he saw his own body and then he went back into it, like, I think, obviously, you know. Anyways, the ghosts try to speak to Yuri, but he's not saying anything. Maddie's really freaking out about her body being out there. They all leave except for Charlie, and then Yuri speaks to him, and we find out that Janet made a pot. Important thing to note is that Yuri, the ghost, I don't know why I said it like that. There's no Yuri who's not a ghost. But Yuri, every single day, makes a pot, and it resets because all the objects reset in the world. So he takes clay, he makes a pot, but it always resets. Janet has a pot there that hasn't reset. Again, the door didn't reset. Janet's pot doesn't reset. Maddie saw Mr. Martin and Janet. Simon can hear Maddie. Like, there's bends into the fabric of the ghost world that I think are very important to note. Also, Yuri is an Russian exchange student. He just pretended to be so we wouldn't have to talk to them. Which, you know what, slay. That's so funny of him. Claire is at cheer practice. Nicole is, like, there waiting for her. And Simon is trying to look into Janet. And Nicole doesn't believe any of it. He's trying to, like, be like, look, Janet Hamilton. And she's really not believing it. But she says they need to stick together because Claire could go to the cops. And they need to be a united front to stop Claire from potentially turning Maddie in. And he says he's going to Bingham County at lunch. And Nicole can join him. And she says she'll drive. Back in the pottery studio, Charlie is shocked that Yuri speaks English and that he knew Janet. And Yuri says that he taught Janet how to make a picture. And then Charlie's like, why did you let Mr. Martin and everyone think that you didn't speak English? And he's like, it allowed me to skip the meetings. And he's like, I don't need to reflect on why I'm here. I've got eternal youth. There's tension from the beginning, right? They're kind of flirty. I was shipping them from the beginning. And Charlie asks about a box and if that was Janet's too. And Yuri confirms that Janet made that too. And then he finds Janet's notebook in a drawer, like a little hidden drawer of that box. Xavier is Googling about ghosts. And, like, he leaves a question on a chat room. Claire notices that Xavier's there basically Xavier's in, like, he's in the administrative office, like, waiting room while his dad's trying to figure out, like, when he's coming back to school and all that. And he's there Googling, leaving questions on chat rooms, etc. Claire notices that he's there. They have a little conversation. He asks how she's doing. He's like, you're the one who almost died. And he's like, I did actually for a few minutes. And then he's like, we can't be together if Maddie is still out there. And then he basically says he deserved her hitting him. And maybe he deserved more. Like, okay, that's a little bit dramatic. The ghosts are looking through Janet's notebook. The first 10 pages are just chemical equations. I wrote in my notes, maybe it's connected to the anomalies in the ghost world. Because I really have this theory. And again, this may be so far off, but I feel like there's something about the whole ghost world and Mr. Martin. And we do know that they were doing experiments and they had, like, theories and all of that. And this might be so far off, but part of me is like, I don't know. I have like ideas about the ghost world and like, maybe the equations, like, it's all scientific somehow. And, like, because why were Janet and Mr. Martin the first ghosts, but then a lot more people died there? Like, there being ghosts in the hospital makes a lot of sense. A lot of people die in hospitals. This I find a little confusing. You know, like, I feel like the anomalies in the ghost world have something to do with the science experiments of Janet and Mr. Martin and that whole scheme, which I will get more into as the season progresses. Simon meets Maddie at the greenhouse and asks about Rockton County. He's like, can we even get your body back? How did you hear/see her in the first place? And Maddie explains that the hypothesis is because she was in pain and so was Janet, so they were on the same plane emotionally. Janet is still squatting at the farmhouse, and she hears a door creak/footsteps. Somebody comes in, goes up the stairs, and leaves. We never find out who that was. Maybe it was, like, I don't know. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe somebody actually lived in the house. I have no idea who that was supposed to be. Maybe she was just hearing things. I don't know. Nicole and Simon are at the rest stop where they know that somebody got off, and he is really trying to convince Nicole that it's Janet in Maddie's body. He's like, she bought a map. Who uses maps except old-timey ghosts? Like, it has to be Janet in Maddie's body. And he's like, we were raised Catholic. Why don't you believe in ghosts? He's like, if you can believe that there are like good spirits, or like there are spirits in Catholicism, why can't you believe that Maddie's body is in like limbo or something? You know what I mean? The ghosts are still trying to understand Janet's notebook, and Xavier's like in the library, and Maddie feels like he's looking at her. It's very odd. Quinn notices that there's shorthand in Janet's notebook. She recognizes this because her grandma was a secretary, so her grandma taught her this. It doesn't seem to all be written by the same person. Our is used a lot. So basically, Janet and Mr. Martin planned on getting out of there together. Janet is at the house. She gets a flashback to Mr. Martin driving her up to that house one day, her confiding in him that she feels safe there but not in her own home. Mr. Martin says she should wait until she gets to college. She'll like fit right in. He's really encouraging her. Then Janet's dad pops in and gets mad at Mr. Martin, threatens him for daring to suggest that Janet go to college. Evil man. He's an evil man. In the notebook, Janet is saying that Mr. Martin was her champion, and Maddie's confused on how things got to where they were when she came across them, because they were fighting very intensely. Janet was very distraught. She wanted to escape him so bad she jumped into some strange girl's body. Like, Maddie's like, how does this make sense? Like, when they were alive, he was her champion, and like, how did things go so south, basically? And we do find out as the season progresses, and I'll get to that. Wally says something clearly soured, and you can tell on her face that Rhonda is taking it all really personally. There are also pages torn out. Wally's upset. They confront Yuri about what he knows and why he speaks English. And Yuri says that Janet never spoke to him about crossing over. She knew he didn't believe in any of that. And he's like, where would we go that is better than this? And I'm like, I don't know. Me personally, being stuck in high school forever sounds horrible. I've thought before, I'm like, if I died somewhere, like, where would I want to be? I mean, I don't know. Maybe college. Only because my college is already really haunted. I went to Kenyon College. It's like on, if you Google like most haunted colleges, it's on there. So I know I would have some friends to hang out with. I think that could be fun. There are a lot of ghosts there. Like, I think I would have friends, you know, and most of them would be around my age. So it would be fun. I think if I were to die anywhere, I mean, I did, like, TMI, but I did almost die in college. So, like, if I had died there, honestly, that would have been fine. I don't want to die, and I'm glad I didn't die in college, because I would have never adopted my cat if I had died in college. So, like, obviously, I'm glad I didn't die in college. But, like, of all the places that I was going to die, of, like, a place that I would be happy being stuck there for a long time until I crossed over, I do think my college would be cool, just because there are a lot of other ghosts. Anyways, sorry. But high school, definitely a nightmare to be stuck there. Sorry. And Wally says, save your opinions. We're here for answers. And Yuri's like, aren't we all? But the mysteries of death compound themselves, too. You always have another question. Yuri's very wise. I really liked Yuri. I really liked the added characters that we got in this season. The new ghosts. I really like Janet, but I really like Yuri and Quinn. I really like them being added to the fold. Wally's mad, says Maddie isn't dead. She had her body mugged. He's mad, and he drops Janet's face, and it doesn't reset. Again, Janet's face, there's something about Janet and Mr. Martin and like their ability to control the spirit realm or whatever. Wally is spiraling, and he says, I don't know what the truth is anymore. Everything I've ever known is gone. I lost 2 coaches, 2 teams. I spent years sitting in that folding chair, and I never once questioned our damn leader. That's not a sheepdog, Maddie, that's a sheep. Because Mr. Martin, earlier when they were reading the notebooks, Mr. Martin had called him a sheepdog in it. He says he can't compete with Simon. Simon's alive. Maddie's like, I don't need you to solve my problems. And being loyal and kind and unjaded isn't something to be ashamed of. Like, don't be ashamed of, like, all those things that Mr. Martin wrote about you that you feel, like, insecure about. Now, don't feel insecure about them. Quinn tries to comfort Rhonda. She makes her laugh. Kind of sweet. Janet's pot is not resetting, and they're confused. And Yuri says something wise about people breaking their pots. Charlie jokes that someone wrote something like that in his yearbook, but they just rhymed a lot. They just wrote a lot of words that rhymed with Venus. And Wally says that Janet rhymed geranium with titanium. He found an old yearbook donated that she had written in with mention of Bingham County. Like, basically it said like geranium, titanium, something, and then something about Bingham County. And Maddie's like, what about Bingham County? And he's like, oh, she had a family farm there. And they go to find the yearbook because obviously Simon had mentioned Bingham County. Claire's friends are like assholes to her. There's a lot of tension with Claire's friend group. Simon and Xavier are looking into Janet, and they're trying to find a farmhouse. And Nicole is still hesitant about the whole thing, but they find an address, and Nicole is confused why Xavier is on board. She says that he had a concussion, not a lobotomy. It's like, no, he almost died and he saw ghosts. Janet, inside the farmhouse, sees her dad outside. I don't think it's actually her dad, but she panics. Like, I think she had a vision. Yuri and Charlie have a conversation. He's confused about Janet's paw staying the same because Yuri makes one and it resets every day, and why it broke and stayed broken. And Yuri's like, I don't have the answer for that. But he did fix Janet's pod that broke. He's very poetic. He says something about when something breaks, you glue it back together and embrace the imperfections. He said, it's wabi-sabi. I don't know what the fuck that means. It's an understanding that nothing's ever finished and nothing's perfect. When something breaks, you glue it back together and embrace its imperfections. Yeah, the cracks and the scars only make it stronger, more interesting and beautiful. And then he offers to teach Charlie, and he says another time. I like their dynamic. They're really sweet together. Nicole is looking into ghost stuff, and she finds the forum where Xavier left a comment about speaking with a ghost, and they start chatting unknowingly that it's each other. Claire shows up at Nicole's house and asks to crash there, and then Claire says she owes Maddie an even bigger apology than Xavier does. Wally is looking for Maddie and sees Mr. Martin and chases after him, but he disappears. In the library, they're still decoding Janet's notebooks. They find out that Janet took the death objects, not Mr. Martin. Charlie says he doesn't think all ghosts are created equal because her pot didn't reset. And Charlie thinks she figured out a lot, and Rhonda suggests that Mr. Martin used what he learned from Janet to make her a prisoner. All interesting things to note as the season progresses. We see Janet pour gasoline around the farmhouse. Wally comes to the library and he tells them that he saw Mr. Martin. There was a red light behind him. He looked terrified. And Quinn says maybe he locked Janet up to protect all of them. So there's a big question in the early episodes of, like, who was actually the quote-unquote monster? Was it Janet? Was it Mr. Martin? Who was, like, in the wrong here, right? There's a lot of back and forth of, like, is Janet dangerous? Is Janet the victim? It's up in the air for a few episodes. I was always team Mr. Martin's more in the wrong because he's the teacher, but Janet, inside the farmhouse, the lights match, throws it on the gas that she poured around her house. The house starts burning and she sits and watches. She's, like, inside the house and she's just sitting watching the fire. I fully thought she was dead. I was like, okay, Janet's dead. Simon and Xavier drive up to the house. There's a fire truck there. The house is burning down, basically. So I thought Janet was dead. And that's how episode 2 ends. Episode 3 is called Can't Hauntly Wait. Claire, Nicole, and Simon look through the rubble of the burnt house. Maddie's mom is at the morgue, and she's there to identify a body. So there's a lot of, like, it's unconfirmed at the beginning of this episode if Maddie died in the fire, you know? Claire and Nicole have a conversation about Maddie, and Simon finds Janet's grave that we know was digged up, and he's like, this is proof. Like, why would she dig up her, like, this grave? Claire is still skeptical. Xavier comes and says, good news, the police say no one died in the fire. Then we see Janet stocking up supplies, so Janet is not dead. In the library, the ghosts, Quinn has a murder board to track their theories about Janet and Mr. Martin, and Charlie theorizes that the student became the teacher. Mr. Martin got tired of playing second fiddle, and Ron is like, what does this have to do with getting Janet back? And Maddie's like, we find out what this means, maybe we can finish what she started. Like, all of this hypothesis, maybe if we understand her motivations, we can, like, solve, like, I don't know, they just want to understand Janet more. And then Rhonda questions where Janet's object is. There's a funny moment where Wally says something about kegs, and Quinn is like, that says keys, not kegs. That's important. The keys are important. That's why I brought it up. Anyways, Nicole is chatting with somebody online. We know it's Xavier, but she doesn't. And they bond about ghosts and their thoughts on the ghost world. And then Claire ran into Nicole's brother in the bathroom, which is, like, awkward, but kind of, like, there's, like, flirty tension between them throughout the season. Janet is in the store bathroom after cleaning up because she, like, got supplies at a store, and she's in the bathroom cleaning up. She's checking out and realizes her money is gone. She, like, had a bag of money. The money that we know she stole, like, that she blackmailed. Basically, Mr. Anderson had a bunch of money, and she, like, got that money. In the bathroom, she has, like, the duffel bag full of money, and she left that there. And then she goes back to find it. She realizes she doesn't have any money when she's checking out. And she goes back to the bathroom to find her duffel bag, and it was stolen. And she's screwed because she doesn't have any money now. Simon is answering Xavier's questions about ghost stuff. Simon's kind of annoyed about it, though. But Xavier wants to give Maddie a message now that he knows Simon can talk to her. We see Maddie's mom at AA and Mr. Anderson shows up. Janet is freaking out about her money being gone, understandably. And she thinks she sees someone with her bag, but it's just a similar one. And the girl thinks they go to school together and then offers her a ride back to campus. She says no at first, but then she thinks the store manager is suspicious of her, so Maddie goes with them to campus. And they invite her to a party. She's weird when they bring it up, though. Then she leaves. Nicole's brother sees Maddie on campus, Janet, in Maddie's body on campus. At the high school, Maddie's ghost sees Nicole leaving stuff in her locker, like licorice, to lure a ghost based on stuff that she read in the chat rooms. Mr. Anderson approaches Maddie's mom after the AA meeting, and she says that she knows he didn't have anything to do with Maddie's disappearance. He mentions a speech that she gave when Maddie won an award. This was after Maddie went missing. Her mom accepted the speech in her honor, and Mr. Anderson says that he nominated her and apologizes for not being there when Maddie won. And then she's like, I have to go to the river to identify a body. I've been doing this anytime I get an alert. And so he goes with her. Claire quits the cheerleading squad. Nicole is starting to think that maybe Simon might be right about the whole ghost thing. Maddie is mad at Simon for ignoring her. And then she mentions the licorice that Nicole was putting in her locker. And he tells her that they went to the farmhouse. Xavier's on board, which is good news. And then it cuts back to Claire and Nicole's conversation. Claire thinks that this is all freaky. Nicole gets a text from her brother about Maddie being on campus. Then we cut back to Simon and Maddie. And Simon tells Maddie that Janet burned the farmhouse down. And Maddie's freaking out about her body committing crime. She's like, great. If I do get back to my body, ran somebody over with a car. Arson, great. I have a great rap sheet now when I get my body back. Like, how do you plea in that case? It's like, not guilty. A ghost was in my body. Nicole shows Simon the text and they go to the college campus to track Maddie down. They show people Maddie's photo. Nobody's helping them. And Xavier's still asking Simon a lot of questions about Maddie. And then Xavier and Nicole are texting, but they don't know they're talking to each other. Nicole pretends she was texting Diego, and Claire mentions Diego's Instagram and then thinks of the idea to look in people's background, like the background of people's photos on like their social media to see if they see Maddie in the background. Maddie's freaking out about Janet. She needs them to think back before Janet crossed over to get answers about all of it. The living, I'm like, I don't know how to define them. Back at the college campus, they find a photo of Maddie in the background. She's at a college party, so they go to find her at the college party. Meanwhile, the ghosts go through Janet's last day. It was her sweet 17. It was during the pandemic shutdown, like when schools were closed, and it was this ghost town. There was a party. Charlie saw Mr. Martin and Janet dancing, overheard Janet talking about telling the rest of them something. Maddie asked if there was like anything romantic between them. And Wally's like, there was, but not between Mr. Martin and Janet. And he's like, Janet pulled me aside. She was trying to tell him something, but he thought she was trying to confess her feelings, so he kissed her. He never mentioned it because then she crossed over, so like he thought it was awkward. Maddie then presses Rhonda, and Maddie reveals to the group that Rhonda told Mr. Martin about Simon and Maddie's communication. Rhonda then reveals that Mr. Martin and Janet fought that day. She's like, it wasn't romantic. She was being betrayed by him. And this is very clearly triggering for Rhonda because she was murdered by a teacher who she trusted, and the teacher did have romantic feelings for Rhonda, like thought that they were something that they weren't and refused to let her go and therefore killed her. We see in the flashback Janet getting her gifts for her birthday, and she has a reaction to Mr. Martin's gift, which is a watch. She stormed off upset, and then Rhonda overheard them fighting about it. Janet says, no more experiments, you promised. She says she'll do it herself, like tell them, give them all back, clearly talking about their objects. She wanted to end the experiment that they were doing or that they were hypothesizing, and he didn't. Like, he wasn't ready to let it go. They think that this means that she was the monster, but Rhonda sees it clearly. At the time, she saw it as what caused Janet to cross over, standing up for herself, something Rhonda feels she never got to do. So she never mentioned it because she saw that moment as Janet standing up to a teacher in a way Rhonda wasn't able to, and that act of defending herself allowed her to cross over because she was like finally at peace. But she realizes now that they were fighting about the objects. Janet wanted to give them back and he wasn't ready, so he locked her up. for a year. And then Rhonda storms off because she's upset about this whole thing. At the college party, they look for Maddie. Well, they look for Janet in Maddie's body. Janet tries to steal somebody's jacket and the girl gets mad, so Janet threatens her. The cops come to break up the party. Nicole's brother and Claire bond a little bit at this party. Claire sees Maddie and tries to talk to her, tells her she can come home. And then Nicole, Simon, and Xavier come up and she turns away from them. And when she turns back, Janet is gone. Maddie's mom and Mr. Anderson are at the lake, and we find out she does this whenever she gets an alert, checks to see if a body is Maddie, and that's what we saw at the beginning of the episode. And Mr. Anderson tells her that returning to pain over and over is as addictive as anything else. Rhonda is holding her object, which is her acceptance note to Berkeley, and we get a flashback to the day she died. She excitedly goes to tell her guidance counselor, and it's intercut with Rhonda present day in a really interesting way that I enjoyed. Then the rest of them are at the greenhouse. They realize the use of keys means something. They're like, what if the objects are the keys? She says she's seen the watch Mr. Martin gave Janet on her last day. He was holding it the day he disappeared. The object is the key, and the watch has to be Janet's. As Rhonda goes to the door of the room where she died, there's a red light. She's holding her acceptance note, and there's a red light. She goes into the room where she died, and it's her own personal hell. It's like the day she died, but like heightened. Everything's red. The emotions are heightened. She's stuck. She can't leave. She runs out scared. Like, she's stuck there. She's struggling. She's like, all the emotions are like heightened. It's her own personal hell. She runs out scared. The door lights up red when she's near it with the letter, but not otherwise. So we get confirmation here that it's her keys. The group, the living, I literally don't know what to call them. So the living get back from the college campus. Claire feels bad. She feels like she couldn't convince Maddie to stay. And Nicole says no one could have convinced her. Xavier gets a call from his dad, and Nicole tells Simon that she saw Maddie at the party too before the cops came. And she says, and the girl I was looking at was somebody else. She's fully on board. She thinks it's Janet. And he's like, Maddie got your licorice. Basically confirming to Nicole that Simon can, in fact, talk to Maddie. Simon gets in the car with Xavier, and he's upset about how he's going to tell Maddie that they lost Janet again. And Xavier says that they'll tell her together. And Simon's like, this feels new to me, not doing this alone. The episode ends with Mr. Anderson dropping Maddie's mom off at home. She turns off all her alerts. She's no longer going to be going to identify people's bodies. And Janet, as Maddie, comes up to her. She's home. And this season, they did 3 episodes. They dropped 3 episodes at the beginning, and then every week there was 1 episode. And this was the end of like the 3-episode premiere, and I was gagged. That was a great place to end the first drop of episodes. Episode 4 is called A Walk In to Remember. Maddie's mom is trying to get answers, but Janet isn't saying much. She's like, Maddie's mom is apologizing a lot. Her name is Sandra. Janet just wants a bath. We get a lot of flashes of things as she's in the bath. Her leaving the school in Maddie's body, the fire, hitting Xavier, etc. She's like having a lot of visions, right? Maddie's mom brings her cinnamon toast, which is apparently something Maddie really liked, and also tells her that her friends have been worried about her and suggests giving them a call. But Janet does not want to call. She's not ready for anybody else to know she's back yet. She just wants it to be her and her mom. Rhonda tells them about the personal hell experience, about needing to hold the letter to get in and out, therefore the key. The key opened the door to her scar, which was her own personal hell. They put together the last time Wally saw Mr. Martin, there was also a red light. The light has something to do with the keys and the scars. And she says that when Janet ran into her, she also saw a red light. Like when Mr. Martin and Janet were fighting and Janet ran into her, she also saw a red light. Mr. Martin has to be hiding inside the scars. Like he's going into the scars and he's hiding there. Wally says that maybe he's doing some experiments in there. Maddie kind of hints that they should go into their scars. And Charlie's like, why would we do that? That's your own problem. He doesn't say that, but it's like he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to my own personal hell. He's staying out. Wally isn't shutting it down though. He's open to the idea of doing it because he wants to do what he can for Maddie. Nicole and Xavier are still texting unknowingly that they're texting each other, and he tells his dad he's going to a mandatory event at school because his dad's kind of like, you should stay home, and he's like, I have to go. It's mandatory. Claire finds out that Nicole's been texting somebody, and Nicole thinks Simon might be right. Like Claire still thinks, and Nicole is like, I'm believing the ghost thing. I'm talking to somebody about ghosts. I think Simon might be right. And Claire still thinks it's crazy. We also find out Claire's mom is like ignoring her calls. Her mom is not showing up for her. Her parents are still really mad about the whole being at the place where Xavier got hit by a car thing. Maddie tries to get into Charlie's car and can't, so they find out that they can only use their own keys. Rhonda says it might be a good day to jump into somebody's body. Basically, the event at school is like a bonding event, and Rhonda's like, this would be a good day for somebody to like escape into somebody's body, a walk-in, if you will, which is what happened to Maddie with Janet, and also something that Dawn talked about. Like, this is a day where it would be good to jump into somebody's body because everybody's kind of emotional. They're going to be vulnerable. The whole point of the day is that the students and the teachers are sharing and opening up and being vulnerable. Janet jumped into Maddie's body when she was vulnerable. Mr. Martin wrote something about revisiting trauma, which leads to access points, and the school will be full of vulnerable people. Mr. Martin obviously knows that, so they're like, we need to find him because he could jump into somebody's body. Maddie's mom is relieved that Maddie's home. Mr. Anderson comes to pick her up for an AA meeting, but she can't go. And Mr. Anderson is a mess, says he has to go into the school to clear out his desk. He has to forfeit his teaching license because of the whole blackmail stealing money scandal from season 1. Simon and Xavier are at the greenhouse, and Maddie comes in and is freaking out with the craziness of the afterlife and the scars and everything. Simon tells Maddie that Xavier has something to say, but Xavier chickens out. And then Simon tells Maddie that they lost Janet again. The event is Senior Togetherness Day. Simon wants to ditch it to find Janet. Xavier and Nicole agree. Claire's cheerleading friend, whose name I do not know, is upset that she's not hanging out with them anymore. And Nicole tells Claire they're leaving, and she says, okay, I'm joining you. The 4 of them try to leave, and the principal stops them, saying if they leave, they will be suspended. And they have to turn their phones in. So they turn their phones in. Wally goes into his car with his key, which is the football he had. He goes into his own personal hell. It's like a football game, but it's a nightmare again. Very red. Emotions are heightened. His mom is there. The coach is like really pushing him. He sees his dead body, leaves in a panic. It's really upsetting emotionally. It's like the day you died, but way worse. Janet is in Maddie's room, and her necklace, that was a big thing last season, I think, is like, where did Maddie's necklace go? Maddie was missing some things when she died, her phone, her necklace, things like that. Her necklace is there on the table, and if she wants to wear it, her mom says she had the clasp fixed. She also says she has Maddie's schoolwork. She's been picking it up every week, and Janet's like, I'm not going back to that school. Her mom asks what happened to her, and she won't say anything. And then her mom is like, I'm going to the store. If you don't want to go grocery shopping with me, that's okay, but promise me you'll be here when I get back. So her mom goes to the store. Wally is like really distraught about everything that he saw in his scar. Charlie, Yuri, and Rhonda are in the pottery art studio, and he's teaching Charlie pottery stuff. Maddie then goes and gives Charlie his key back, and Rhonda wants to forget about the keys, and Maddie's like, yeah, I'm gonna like lay off. Wally's really upset about whatever he saw in there, and she leaves. Then Yuri asks if Maddie has used her key, and Charlie says he doesn't think she has one. Rhonda says, well, she's not really dead. And then Charlie's like, if she did, she probably would use it, no matter how scary it was. And Yuri says, you're already dead. What's the worst that could happen? Because Charlie is clearly struggling out using his key, and he's like, Maddie would face this fear that I'm unable to do, is basically what he's saying. There are trust exercises for the Senior Togetherness Day, and Simon is just upset that he's here in the first place. One of the exercises is like one of those where you step forward if something is true, and Nicole and Claire really relate to each other, and Claire's cheerleading friend, whose name I don't know, is upset about this, so she steps forward, and one of the questions is like, step forward if you have a hard time finding like hair care that works for your type of hair. Claire's friend steps forward. She's white. Claire is black, and Nicole is Latina. So at least I think her brother's name is Diego, so I think she's supposed to be Latina. Anyways, they have curly hair, right? And Claire's friend is white with straight hair, and she's like, girl, what? Maddie's mom sees the sheriff at the grocery store parking lot. She goes to tell him something. We don't see, but we find out later that Maddie's back. Charlie goes into his scar. There's a vending machine. The only thing available are salted peanuts. He doesn't eat them. He begins to choke without even eating them. And then there's a table full of people laughing at him. He sees Mr. Martin in his car and he tries to run after him. He then, after, tells the group about seeing Mr. Martin. He chased him all the way to the football field, but he lost him. And he's like, and that's pretty impressive considering the fact that I was in full anaphylactic shock. Mr. Martin can get in and out of their cars without their keys. Rhonda's still really upset. Wally decides to go back into his. They're like, we can't even, like, we can only go into ours, but he can go into all of them and, like, disappear, and, like, they're mad, which is understandable. Janet is in Maddie's room looking through her closet. She picks out a dress. She tries to smile like Maddie is in a photo on her wall. Maddie's mom comes home and she tells Janet that the police think she was murdered, so she told the sheriff that she's back and he's coming to get a statement. The sheriff is also Xavier's father. I don't know if I mentioned that. And then Maddie's mom is like, if there's anything you want to tell me before he comes, you should do that now. Back at the school, there's another chess exercise, and Claire's friend, like, airs her out. She's like, I had a friend who ditched me, but that's not surprising because she has a history of that. She ditched a friend in middle school and then started sleeping with her boyfriend, like, last year or whatever. Because basically Claire and Maddie were friends. Then they stopped being friends, and then she was sleeping with Xavier. Or hooking up with Xavier, who knows the extent of it. She was hooking up with Xavier even though Xavier was dating Maddie, right? Okay. Claire runs off upset, understandably, because that's like a really like a bitchy thing to do. And Nicole tries to go after her, but Claire says to leave her alone. Maddie tries to talk to Wally, but he says he can't stop to talk about it or he won't be able to go in. She pulls him into a classroom. They talk. He's still mad at Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin knew the whole time what was there in that football field, and he let him go every year to the homecoming game. Like, he's mad that Mr. Martin knew that underneath the reality that they exist, that, like, there was a version of that field that was Wally's personal hell, and he still allowed Wally to, like, go there where he died every year, you know? Mr. Anderson and the principal walk into the classroom where Maddie and Wally are in. Mr. Anderson's packing up his stuff. The principal's like, I'll give you all the time that you need. Typically, I'd have to watch you, but, like, take your time. Xavier gets called to the office for a call from his dad. And Wally and Maddie then talk about Mr. Anderson, and she says he's the best teacher she ever had. She feels responsible for, like, what's happening to him, and Wally's like, he chose to steal that money. And she says she doesn't think she would have done any better. But basically, he stole the money for his dad. And she's like, I don't think that I would have done any better. You're also in high school, though, and he's like an adult who should be a little bit wiser than to steal money. Like, I get it. If you really need to help somebody, like, you will go to, like, certain lengths. But also, like, anyways, she's upset that Wally won't tell her what's inside his scar. And he's like, it's bad. He says that when he died, he felt nothing. But in that scar, he felt everything. All the disappointment, all the expectations he couldn't meet. And she says he doesn't have to go back in, and he says that the way Maddie feels about Mr. Anderson is how he felt about Mr. Martin. He needs to go back in to find him, not just for her, but for himself. Nicole messages Xavier, but not Xavier. Shred had something. And then Xavier comes, she's in the computer lab messaging him. Xavier comes into the room and tells her that his dad just called and said that that Maddie is back, but they know it's Janet. They need to go to Maddie's house. Nicole asks if Simon knows. Xavier says he doesn't know, but if we tell him, he'll run out and get suspended. And Nicole's like, so will we? And Xavier's like, yeah, better us than Simon, though, because Simon can talk to Maddie and we can't. So if Simon isn't allowed at school, we lose all access to the ghost world. Nicole and Xavier then, like, they go into a storage closet and they're hiding. And Nicole is like, maybe we should wait. And he's like, she could run away again or burn down another house. So they head to leave the school. Xavier's dad tries to get information from Maddie, aka Janet, and she's not saying anything. Janet then leaves the room upset, and the sheriff wants answers, and Maddie's mom tells him to leave. Simon finds Claire outside in the, like, football field, and she's crying. Her mom isn't answering her, and she says that when her parents got divorced and she asked to live with her dad, her mom didn't speak to her for 3 months. It's crazy. And Simon comforts her, and then Claire says that Chloe, her cheerleader friend, whose name I did not know up until now, is right about her. She does use people and ice them out. Like, no, I'm sorry. Even if your friend is upset with you, airing you out in public like that is, no, she's not right. Then Maddie joins them, Ghost Maddie joins them, and Claire says that she's the last person that Maddie would want to talk to. Of course, that's why she ran away when I spoke to her at the party, and she says that she couldn't even say the one thing that mattered the most, which was that she's sorry. Ghost Maddie tells Simon to say Lola to Claire. It's the name of the stuffed dog that Claire gave Maddie when her dad died. Claire's like, it's not that I don't believe you, that you're speaking to her ghost. I just don't want Maddie to be gone. The lights flicker. There's like a strange sound and an electricity. And Maddie is like, did you hear that? And Simon's like, what? And she's like, I've never experienced this, but this is what but the other ghosts tell me that this is what happens when someone dies. Charlie goes to find out what happened and tells Yuri he should join him. And he's like, no. And Charlie's like, when's the last time you left this room? And then he says to Yuri what Yuri said to him earlier, which is, you're already dead. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Maddie, Simon, and Claire are running. Claire's like, where are we going? And Simon's like, to find some people we can't see. Maddie's trying to find Charlie and Rhonda to find out who died. They run into Xavier and Nicole as they are ditching the school. The principal finds them and is mad, and then Nicole is like, Maddie's back. She got home last night. Maddie then goes to tell the ghosts about Janet being back. They're freaking out because they've looked everywhere. There's no ambulances. There's no dead bodies. The last time that happened was when Maddie died. And Mr. Martin probably snuck into somebody's body. Claire, Nicole, Simon, and Xavier go to Maddie's house. They see Janet as Maddie through the window, and that's where the episode ends, with us being like, okay, who jumped in to, like, whose body did Mr. Martin jump into? And now Janet's back. So episode 5 is called Ghost Who's Coming to Dinner. The titles for these episodes are so goofy, but I love it. Ghost Maddie angrily destroys things in the cafeteria. It all resets. Maddie's mom tells Janet that Simon has been texting and encourages her to contact her friends or maybe even see a therapist. And she's like, I'll have my friends over, because clearly the idea of a psychiatrist like freaks her out. So she's like, which I don't know, maybe there's something there. Obviously, mental health care in the 50s was probably horrible. Like, maybe her dad sent her to a therapist to convince her to be like a good housewife, you know, like maybe she has some kind of negative experience that way. Quinn is holding her trumpet, and Rhonda finds her and tells her that might not be her key. And I wrote in my notes, maybe it's not her key because maybe not all of them have a key. Were those that were out there, were out of it looping, do they have keys? Because they're not test subjects. Or like, does everybody have a key if they die there? But he wasn't, they're not all variables in the experiment, so he didn't have all of them, maybe. But maybe he did have all of them. Like, I don't know. Maybe she doesn't have a key. Because if they're all like an experiment, I think my biggest question after watching the season and rewatching the season to take notes is, we know that part of the experiment was controlled by Mr. Martin. Like, a lot of things, like obviously he was keeping data and he was in charge of the experiment. Janet played a role. I'll get more into that. But I guess my biggest question is like, how much of it was manufactured by, I don't know. Like, I'm really confused about like messing with the balance of the ghost world and how much that was on. Like, did he have any control over that? I'm very confused. Like, do they all have keys because you have a key when you die? Or do they have keys because they're part of this experiment that leads to, or was their personal house there and they just accessed it? I'm still confused. And maybe I'm just stupid and other people have better interpretations, but like that, I think it's my biggest question, because there are some things Mr. Martin says later that I'm like, okay, what the fuck does that mean? I'll get into it. Sorry. Rhonda finds the watch, which we know Janet got the day before she crossed over, that freaked her out, that Mr. Martin had when he disappeared. They think it's Janet's key. Rhonda and Quinn bring that to Wally and Charlie, and they think Mr. Martin escaped in somebody else's body. Do you need your key to get into somebody's body too? Like, is it a key between the worlds as well? I have no idea. I have a lot of questions. Simon and Maddie are in the cafeteria, and he tells her about the dinner with Janet. Maddie's freaking out about Janet. She's upset that her mom can't tell it's her, and Simon's like, they seem cozy, like they were doing a movie night. Maddie's like, great, he's being the perfect mother, just not to me. Simon tells Maddie he doesn't think her mom will let Janet go back to the school anytime soon. Based on Xavier's dad's like recollection, Maddie is like really resistant to that. Janet, but they think it's Maddie. Maddie tells Simon to say yes to the dinner. They'll come up with a plan regarding the dinner, and the two groups, the ghosts and the living, will come up with that plan together. They all meet. Simon puts the ghost photos on chairs that they're sitting on to like indicate where they are, and they try to like communicate through Simon to get a plan to have Janet back. In order to get her back, they need to know more about her. Janet is looking through Maddie's things. Then it cuts back to the group meeting. They tell the living people that Janet is big into science and she's scared of Mr. Martin. Wally tries to say that it should be treated like a hostage situation. Bad idea. It's a bad idea. Xavier read that ghosts hate salt. He suggests dumping salt on Janet to trap her. Also very unserious. Claire suggests that they make the school seem not scary and then later bring up Mr. Martin after the fact, which is actually a good idea. Maddie tells Simon that he can mention to Janet that Dawn crossed over. It's possible for her to move on. That'll maybe make her want to come back. And Xavier asks why Janet chose Maddie's body. And Simon says Maddie wasn't in a great place. And Claire asks, how is she now? Which is kind of sweet. It was a very sweet moment. Janet looks through Maddie's things and is trying to replicate the way Maddie carries herself and laughs and things like that. She's like studying Maddie to become Maddie. After the meeting with the ghosts, Nicole tells the group of the living that there was something she didn't mention to the ghosts. She found a photo of Janet and a guy named Eugene in a yearbook, and he's still alive, and she thinks that they should go to see him. In the library, the ghosts are looking through Janet's notebooks, and Maddie thinks that they have to reverse engineer what happened that day. Maddie is taking the watch to the boiler room and seeing if that opens up her personal hell. Quinn and Rhonda have a conversation. Quinn doesn't really feel like she's part of the group. They're in the music room, and Rhonda hates the music room. Quinn loves it. Rhonda hates the memorialization of a former friend of hers, Marjorie, because Marjorie wrote a song about what happened to Rhonda called Foolish Girl, and it upsets her. Yuri leaves the pottery studio. He shows up at the library. He joins them in looking through Janet's notebook. Charlie broke through to him. Rhonda broke through to Quinn. Charlie broke through to Yuri. Beautiful, beautiful. Maddie goes to the boiler room with the watch. There's a red light and she goes inside. It's on fire. There's Janet's burnt jacket, all of Janet's possible accolades that she never got, a zombie-esque Janet saying I was robbed. So she thinks that's Janet's scar. Charlie and Yuri, there's like tension between them. Charlie's like, I wonder if Yuri left the pottery studio for him. Charlie's like, did he leave the pottery studio for me? He's unsure if Yuri's actually interested in him. Yuri realizes the formulas that Mr. Martin was writing about are all connected to serotonin and dopamine. He says feelings are powerful. If he manipulated that shit, he could carve out open access points. And Charlie's like, how do you know all this? And then he talks about how he diagnosed himself with a lot of stuff. He had anxiety, and he died of a panic attack, which triggered his asthma, and he got locked in the greenhouse. He didn't have his inhaler, he got locked in the greenhouse, and he died of an asthma attack. Nicole and Xavier are still chatting about ghost stuff unknowingly. Janet watches a video of Maddie and tries to replicate her laugh. Nicole goes to the old folks' home where Eugene lives. Is that the proper terminology? I'm like, that sounds derogatory. I don't know. Wherever Eugene lives, it's like a residential, whatever it's called. Anyways, she goes to talk to Eugene, pretends she's on the school newspaper and asking about like women in STEM basically. And he gets upset when Janet is brought up. He's like, I said all I wanted to back then and nobody believed me. We get a flashback to the day Mr. Martin getting fired. Eugene is upset talking about it. He says Mr. Martin barely spoke to Janet after that, and he can't talk about it anymore. He put away everything that had to do with that fire, locked it in his storage locker. He can't live with it anymore. Nicole asks if he thinks Mr. Martin burned down the fire, and he says both Janet and Mr. Martin were meticulous. Neither of them would have made that kind of mistake. Quinn is listening to the song written by Rhonda's friend Marjorie, and Rhonda's upset. She says that she never made it past the second verse. It blames her for her own murder, calls her a foolish girl. She's upset and she storms off. Simon called a phone at the school that that way the ghosts can hear the dinner. Like through his cell phone, he called the school so the ghosts can hear Simon will have the phone so the ghosts will hear what they're saying at the dinner. At the dinner, they try to convince Janet to go back to the school. They bring up some cool science stuff. And Maddie's mom announces that Maddie is finishing senior year online. At the school, Maddie's upset. She's at the pool. Wally joins her, and I really love this scene. Maddie talks about Janet deserving like her life and accomplishing things that she like never would. She would do something more with it, something bigger. And then Wally says, some people are destined to do big things. That's great. But the rest of us, we carry the small gifts. That's just as important to the people whose lives we touch. He wishes that she could stay there with him, but she deserves to live. They make out in the pool. It's a sweet scene. At the dinner, they're still trying to convince Janet. Xavier spills salt on her. They're not getting anywhere. And then Nicole mentions Eugene, and Janet gets upset, goes to the kitchen. Maddie's mom tries to talk to her, tries to be like, why don't you just microwave that because she put something in the oven? And she's like, no, I'm okay. Again, little hints that she's an old-timey ghost. The rest of the gang in the living room talk about how they're failing, and Xavier mentions that she even laughs like Maddie. All that practice worked. Nicole says that she's not going back. Her dead teacher might have set the fire, who killed them. both, according to Eugene. Xavier picks up a photo, like, Xavier drifts off, like, starts walking, and he picks up a photo in Maddie's living room and realizes he recognizes the man in the photo from when he was he died at the hospital. Maddie's mom tells them that they're calling it a night, and then Simon goes into the kitchen to say goodbye to Maddie. He tells Janet that they didn't mean to blow her cover, they're just trying to help their friend. He says Mr. Martin is no longer at the school, she's safe to go back. Dawn crossed over, she can too. And she hands him pie, says nothing else. And then in the school, a janitor begins to vacuum, and Janet hears the sound through Simon's phone and realizes that he's on the phone. She puts his phone in boiling water. Like, property damage, rude. The ghosts are like, well, we can't do anything now. It's not like we can answer the phone again, even if he calls. And Quinn tells Rhonda that she has something to show her. Charlie tells Yuri that maybe they should look for Maddie and Wally, and he says maybe they don't want to be found. He didn't until he did, and thanks Charlie for that and the encouragement to leave the room. Very sweet. Maddie and Wally are in the pool. They have their fun little moment in the pool. The gang leaves Maddie's upset. Like, Xavier and the living group leaves Maddie's upset. Xavier asks Maddie's mom about the photo of the fisherman, and she says it's Maddie's dad. So Xavier realizes that he saw Maddie's dad at the hospital. Xavier texts Nicole, who he still doesn't know is Nicole, but she realizes that it's him because he mentioned something about pouring the salt and nobody around him trusting him. And then she sends him a message, and his phone rings, and she's like, oh my God, I've been texting Xavier this whole time. Quinn, in the music room, shows Rhonda that the second verse of the song that Rhonda never got to was really sweet. It was about how she was the foolish one. She says, she didn't think you were the fool, Rhonda. She thought she was. Because it ends and she's like, I was the foolish girl for not believing my friend. Which is really sweet. I have no commentary. It was just really sweet of Quinn to care enough to, listen and prove to Rhonda that not everybody in her life judged her the way she thinks they did. Yuri and Charlie are in the library. Charlie feels like there's no way Janet will give Maddie's body back, and then Yuri says that emotions stir up biochemical reactions. Charlie invites him to Wally's reunion party, says it won't be a date though, and Yuri's like, why can't it be? They're so romantic, love them. Maddie and Wally see Mr. Anderson, but he can see them, so they realize he's dead. And they're like, if Mr. Martin's not here, and he is, and a body never showed up, Mr. Martin's in his body. Mr. Martin, in Mr. Anderson's body, goes to Maddie's house and drops off a book for Maddie. So he'll come by tomorrow to see Maddie's mom again. Janet goes out to throw away the book, and the episode ends with her being kidnapped, like somebody throws a bag over her head. So it's like, is it Mr. Martin who kidnapped her? That's the implication. Episode 6 is called Ghost Point Blank. The ghosts are in the library, and Maddie is upset about how long it's taking, like where Janet is, why didn't they bring her back now? And they talk about Mr. Anderson and how he doesn't seem to mind that a ghost is in his body. We see Maddie's body, so Janet, in the back of a car. We still don't know who kidnapped her. Maddie's mom shows up at Mr. Anderson's house, and Mr. Martin's there. And she's worried about Maddie, doesn't think she slept in her bed. It's the next day. The living have duct taped Maddie and tied her up in a cabin. That was Maddie's. Maddie and her mom had a cabin that her mom was going to sell, so it's like abandoned. Janet says she'd sooner die than go back to the school. She's like, how do you even know about the ghosts? And Simon's like, I can talk to Maddie. Janet doesn't believe Dawn crossed over. How could she figure out something Janet couldn't? Like, Janet was studying and doing all this. Like, how would she know when Janet didn't? Simon says he'll bring proof that Dawn crossed over. At the school, they're preparing for the class of 84 reunion party. Simon is going to the school to find proof of Dawn crossing over. He needs a phone, but no one wants to give him one. So he tells Claire to come with him. They'll stop at Nicole's house first, so Nicole's mom doesn't freak out about Nicole not showing up for days. Nicole is acting weird around Xavier because she knows that he was who she was talking to. At the school, Maddie is upset about Simon and the group kidnapping Janet. He says that he needs proof that Dawn crossed over. And then Maddie tells Simon that Mr. Martin stole Mr. Anderson's body. And Simon's like, he was creeping out around your house after the dinner. And Maddie says Simon has to make sure that Mr. Anderson doesn't get to Janet. Nicole is playing the same song over and over. It was a song that earlier in the season, the guy she was talking to suggested she listen to. So she's like trying to tell Xavier, I know it was you. And Xavier's like, what are you doing about the music? Like, what are you doing? And she confronts Xavier about him being the guy she was texting, and he's caught off guard because he didn't know it was her either. They fight a bit, and Nicole storms off. Wally is looking through stuff at the reunion party. Charlie comes up to him, and he's like, I'm looking for stuff for Maddie. And Charlie's like, relax, not everything has to be about her. And then Charlie talks about his date. He's really nervous about it. And then Wally puts on music and dances. Charlie, Rhonda, and Quinn join him. The dancing scene is intercut with a few brief scenes. First, Simon and Claire are outside Mr. Anderson's house. Maddie walking down the hallway upset. Xavier texting Nicole he didn't know was her and to come back. Janet asks Xavier for a glass of water. She tries to connect with him by siding with him in regards to his fight with Nicole, which she overheard because it was outside of the cabin where she was locked up. She says he's a good person, asks to loosen the rope, and she kind of guilts him by being like, you don't want to give Maddie a bruised body. Simon and Claire are outside Mr. Anderson's. Nicole calls and says she's in a forest, and Simon tells her to get back to Xavier, and then Mr. Anderson leaves his house. Rhonda and Quinn are looking for proof that Dawn crossed over. Maddie goes into Janet's car and leaves through Rhonda's. So the scars are connected. You can go in through one and leave through another. It's the first time we see that happen. At Wally's reunion party, they do an in memoriam, and Wally, Charlie, and Yuri overhear someone talking about how Wally was like a homophobic asshole, and Wally apologizes to Charlie, and Charlie's like, it's fine. Nicole gets back to the cabin, and Xavier is like he seems like he's falling asleep, but then he's like fully awake, so I don't know. He's untied one of Janet's hands though, and Nicole is upset. Nicole's brother then pulls up to the cabin because basically Nicole hasn't been answering her mom's phone for like a while, and I guess her brother wanted to track her down for the mother. I do not know. Feels a little silly to me. Claire and Simon follow Mr. Anderson, and he gets to the property where Janet was squatting, which was Claire's property, Claire's family's property. So she calls the sheriff, since it's her parents' building, to get Mr. Anderson to scram. Maddie explains her journey between the scars to Rhonda and Quinn, and she says maybe that's where Mr. Martin went. He was hiding in the scars. Did I say that earlier? I think they theorized that he was hiding in the scars, but maybe they didn't realize you could go between them. So that's how they weren't finding him, because he was just going through the scars the entire time, like that path. Maddie goes into Wally's journal and traces a drawing onto the map. She thought the arrows were like a football play, but it's actually like a path of the scars going into each other. It's a path that you can go in between. Maddie's like, we don't need Dawn's key. This is the way into her scars. So you don't need the keys. If you go into one scar, you can go into the others. The sheriff shows up at the abandoned house where Mr. Anderson is there and takes him into questioning. Nicole's brother is at the cabin, and he's there to check on her. He sees Xavier, and he's like, oh, I get it now, implying that they snuck off to be together. Xavier slips up and mentions Maddie, and Nicole's brother is like, Nicole's brother is like, is Maddie here? Charlie and Yuri are at the dance. Charlie is extremely nervous. They dance. Yuri kind of talks about his anxiety and how he was always too anxious to make it into a dance and how this is his first dance, kind of trying to reassure Charlie. And Charlie's like, I'm not anxious. And he gets upset and he walks away. Maddie makes her way through the scars. She gets to Dawn's. She finds a flower and then a whole ton of flowers. Nicole's brother is like suspicious of why they're acting weird. And Janet's trying to use it to her advantage. To like be like, oh, we should get pizza. We should like leave, you know. Maddie tells Simon about the scars connecting the flowers, and he's like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, you want me to go and tell Janet some weird thing about scars connecting and some flowers, like, and she's like, it's all I have. Maddie's mom is anxiously calling Simon and all of her friends to get an answer on where Maddie is, because Maddie hasn't been home for a while, and we know that she was kidnapped, right? They're holding her hostage, but Maddie's mom has no idea where she went. She just thinks she disappeared again. Maddie's mom grabs her keys and heads out. At the police station, the sheriff tells Mr. Anderson, who's actually Mr. Martin, that he has an alibi the night of Xavier's accident, and he should have just told him, because he brings him into questioning, and he's like, my son was injured, where were you? And he like doesn't say anything, so he brings him to the police station, and after the fact, he's like, you had an alibi, you were at AA, why didn't you tell me? He didn't tell you because, again, similar to Maddie, not running from her friends because she doesn't know who the fuck they are. Mr. Anderson didn't mention the alibi because he's not actually Mr. Anderson, he's Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body. The sheriff is like, why would you trespass when you nearly went to prison? Did you forget? Yes, literally, he has no recollection because it's not him. He has to sign something and then he can go, and he spells his name wrong because, again, it's Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body. Maddie's mom shows up at the school and tells the principal that she doesn't know where Maddie is, and she's freaking out. She asks who Eugene is, and the principal's like, I don't know, I've never heard that name before. She's upset that her daughter doesn't want to go back to the school and no one's giving her any answers. The principal's there because he's there for the reunion party thing. Charlie is outside on a table, and Wally finds him and tells him that Yuri's also looking for him, and Wally acknowledges that he was an asshole when he was alive. He would flatten anybody who would hurt Charlie now. And Charlie says, so you're a better person dead than you were alive. Charlie then says that he spent his whole life hating himself. He cracked the jokes about himself so others wouldn't, and there are still moments he believes all of that about himself. He doesn't think anyone would want to be with him. And then Wally's like, Yuri he's into you. He really likes you. Nicole's brother is very confused about the state of the things at the cabin. Simone and Claire then show up with pizza. And Claire takes Diego, Nicole's brother, who I've just been calling Nicole's brother, to go get drinks. Simon tells Janet he has proved Dawn crossed over. Maddie's mom is at the party. She orders a drink at the bar. Mr. Anderson's ghost is really upset that she's drinking, but she doesn't know because he's a ghost. Maddie's mom causes a scene, gets thrown out. Xavier and Nicole are waiting outside of the cabin while Simon talks to Janet. And Nicole asks Xavier if he really saw ghosts at the hospital, and he's like, yeah, that's why I went on that forum in the first place. And she's like, you could have told Simon, and he says he tried. And he's like, you're right, I'm not the person I was in those chats, but maybe that's the person I want to be. Simon tells Janet about the flowers. She's like, what kind? And he's like, they were marigolds. And she's caught off guard a little bit because Dawn talked about marigolds. Simon says that things have changed in the ghost world. He and Maddie can talk. The ghost world isn't necessarily what she thinks it is. She can cross over. Dawn crossed over. There's hope. She can go back to the school. Maddie watches her mom outside in the parking lot Maddie's ghost watches her mom outside in the parking lot. Mr. Anderson's ghost tells her that her mom had been doing well, going to meetings and stuff. Janet says that Dawn might have crossed over, but she got out. She has a chance to live the life she didn't, go to college, have a career, everything she couldn't have in 1958. How is she supposed to give that up? And Simon says, because none of that will make you happy if you're trapped in somebody else's body. She left an innocent person trapped in the school. She runs off, says she doesn't care. He chases after her, says he knows she does care. She was cheated, but she has a heart. And then she asks for a moment alone on the dock, and he gives it to her. She agrees to go back to the school, but she wants a moment alone. Claire sees Mr. Anderson when she's in the store parking lot. Diego went in to, I think, get beer. And she's in the parking lot. She sees Mr. Anderson. She slashes his tires. And then Diego comes out and is like, what was that about? And she's like, please, just drive. And Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body finds that his tires were slashed. Charlie goes to the pottery studio and apologizes to Yuri and says he wants to hear more about what Yuri was talking about. Yuri pulls him into a dance. It's very romantic. They kiss. I'm a big fan of Yuri and Charlie. I'm glad he got a love interest. I'm very happy for them. Maddie's mom is parked outside of a bar. She goes inside. Maddie goes into Dawn's car and she finds an exit. So this is we get introduced to there's an exit in the scars, right? Simon goes back to Nicole and Xavier and tells them that she gave Janet a moment alone on the dock. Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body approaches Janet on the dock, and that's where the episode ends. Episode 7 is called Anatomy of a Fallout Shelter. Simon goes back to the dock, and Janet is gone. They're all like, you're stupid. Why would you do that? Mr. Martin questions Janet about why they know her name. Basically, they're on a rowboat together. Claire and Diego are in a parked car, and Claire told Diego everything. He's still confused, but they start driving towards the cabin. Mr. Martin is like, Janet, this is our second chance. And she's like, this isn't my body. This isn't my life. He says it can be. She tells him he doesn't need her. He should just go do it alone. He doesn't want that. It's been them together for 66 years, trying to cross over, but maybe this is even better. She says Dawn crossed over. He still thinks that this is better. He says she owes him. They struggle on the boat a little bit with the paddle, and then she grabs the paddle and hits him over the head with it, and he falls into the lake. Maddie tells Wally about the exit sign in Dawn's scar and the flowers, and he says maybe there's a way to make it appear in your scar. Maybe you conjure it up. She apologizes for missing his reunion, and he says if he takes her on a date, he wants it to be somewhere much nicer. And they're in a room, and there's a projector going through photos of things and like Paris, stuff like that. And then she asks if he ever went in real life, and he says no. And she says it makes her sad that they never got to go to those places together. And he's like, we're doing that now. They start kissing. We see Yuri and Charlie at the pottery wheel. They start kissing. Everybody has sex. They have sex. Cool. Happy for them. Rhonda and Quinn are in the music room, and Quinn found something, and it's bad. She kept looking for her key, and she found her field marker. When she went into her scar, and it was horrible. And she found something inside the bus. It was a piece of paper. It was the piece of paper, we find out later, that was ripped out of the notebook. Maddie and Wally are in the little bed after they have sex, and she talks about her life and going back. And then he's like, I could make you pancakes every morning. And he knows it's selfish, but he wants to say it one time. He wants her to stay. Rhonda interrupts them, call them to the library. The piece of paper they found was the torn out piece from Janet's journal. Janet was going to lock them up, torture them as an experiment. Mr. Martin must have left it in the bus, thinking there's no way the band would find it. Mr. Martin and Janet were going to use them to get themselves out. We see a line underlined on the paper that says trauma is energy. So again, there's a lot of back and forth of like, Mr. Martin, Janet, who's at fault? Now they're like, Janet wanted to lock us up just as much as Mr. Martin. Simon, Nicole, and Xavier look for Janet. They find her. She's like coming, she like gets out of the river and she says to take her to the school. Xavier and Nicole are cleaning up the cabin, and she asks about what his last text was about, like the fisherman, and he tells her that he saw Maddie's dad at the hospital. And she's like, you can't tell Maddie that. She might not want to get back into her body. She can somehow talk to her dad in the afterlife. And then he says he's glad it was her, because earlier in their conversation, she was like, I'm honestly kind of happy that it was you that I was texting. And he says, I feel the same. Simon and Janet are going to the school together. They're in the car, and he asks about what she was doing and why she has blood on her. She's not answering. Maddie doesn't want to leave them with Janet, but Charlie's like, this, like, isn't the whole point of bringing her here so you can go into your body? Because they really think Janet's like the aggressor right now. And she's like, who even knows how that works? Rhonda says they will handle Janet. If Maddie has an opportunity to get back into her body, she has to take it. Simon tells Maddie to go to the cafeteria, like over the loudspeaker, and he finds a notice of suspension for himself in the administrator's office. At the cafeteria, Maddie faces Janet. Everybody's there. Xavier takes out the trash at the cabin and sees a muddy footprint, and then a hand takes him, Mr. Martin, we assume. Maddie asks Janet about the piece of paper, why she lied about the way she died. She says they didn't want anybody to know because she started the fire. She killed Mr. Martin, and then she says maybe twice. She explains Mr. Martin finding the scars and showing her, then them trying to figure things out. She was like, it was just us for 5 years until Rhonda died. Why are Mr. Martin and Janet the first ghosts? He found the scars. Did he create them? Did he set the fire to create some kind of experiment of the afterlife? Did he genuinely, like, I'm very confused about why Mr. Martin and Janet are seemingly the first ghosts. I have a lot of questions. Mr. Martin lied to Rhonda. Basically, Rhonda dies, and then when Rhonda's ghost is like, who are you, where am I? Mr. Martin in that moment is like, I died, and then Janet died a few years after me. She fell down the stairs. So in that moment, he lied about how Janet died, and that just became the story of how she died. We see the red light with the acceptance note. So when Mr. Martin is like guiding Rhonda, she drops the acceptance note, and it's like in front of the door where she died, and like it glows red, and that's like where they notice that it's like a key to something. Wally asks about stealing the keys, and she says they didn't know they were keys until that moment, Rhonda's death. So I guess they did all have an object when they died, but they didn't realize it was a key into the scars. She says Mr. Martin convinced her to keep it all secret. Claire and Diego arrive back to the cabin, but nobody's there. Then Nicole shows up, and she says she can't find Xavier. Claire says Mr. Anderson was heading this way, and they have to go find Xavier. And we see him tied up on the boat. Back at the school, they continue to interrogate Janet. Wally asks about support group. They realize it was part of the experiment. We get a flashback to Janet and Dawn. Dawn mentions the lights. She also mentions marigolds. Janet says that conversation made her realize that the rooms were fueled by trauma. That's what makes the objects stay and not reset, because most of the objects reset. They wouldn't have been able to hold on to them for them to like be permanent and like keys, if you will. Mr. Martin is at the cabin and overhears the others yelling for Xavier and then grab something from the fireplace. They hear Xavier in the boat and they send Claire to swim for him. At the school, they're still questioning Janet, wondering why she didn't say anything. And Yuri says that when a test subject knows they're being observed, they change their behavior. And he says it sounds like Mr. Martin was using that on Janet as much as she was using it on them. And they ask how it went south, and she says another variable showed up. And then we get a flashback to Christmas. Janet and Mr. Martin went together to get some cookies, and she explains her hypothesis about like what happens when they all of them going into their scars and like trauma being energy and all of these things. And he's like, now we have to figure out how to get them all there together at the same time. And she's like, no, it's purely hypothetical. And he's like really pushing for it though. And she's like, but that would be like torturing them. They asked Janet what she thought would happen. And she said she lost herself in her partnership with Mr. Martin. And then they pan to Simon and he seems upset. And I think we're supposed to make the parallel of him losing himself in the whole Maddie being missing thing. He leaves and they realize that Quinn left a little while ago too. Rhonda goes to find Quinn. She's back at the marching band, like, pretending to loop. But Rhonda's like, I know you're not looping. And then Quinn and Rhonda have a conversation. Quinn feels like she caused all of this by finding the page. And she says she's done this before. She joined the band to feel like she was part of something. But soon there was tension. Everybody started hating her, and then they died. She feels alone, and then Rhonda says she never has to be alone again. She understands the feeling of struggling to connect. She feels that too, but she's let Quinn in, and she can't leave her now, and they hug, and it's really sweet. I love the Quinn-Rhonda dynamic. Simon is leaving the school, and Maddie stops him at the bus stop, and he's upset about all the talking and the fact that she isn't just jumping into her body, and she cares about getting answers for her friends. And he's like, your friends are out there potentially in danger because they care about you or whatever. And he asks if she doesn't want to come back, and then asks if it's about Wally, and he says he misses her in their normal life, and she says she does too, but the ghosts don't have anybody else. Simon says he's getting suspended. He messed up his interview with Northwestern because he was so preoccupied with her. And she says she didn't ask him to do any of that. She was actually trying to stop him. In season 1, he has an interview with Northwestern, and he's like really messing up the answers because he's like preoccupied with thinking about Maddie, and she's trying to like get through to him, but it's in one of the rooms of the school where she can't reach him, so he messes up the interview and she can't snap him out of it. They go back into the school, and Simon calls the admissions office and gets another interview, which is, I'm happy for him. The others find Xavier at the boat, and they bring Xavier in the boat. They untie him. Then Mr. Martin is there, and he's threatening to hurt Diego with like the I don't know what the fuck it's called, from the fireplace. Threatens Diego if they do anything, and he takes Diego's car keys and then tells them not to follow him. Yuri and Wally have a conversation, like a sidebar, if you will, in the cafeteria, and Yuri says that Maddie is considering being here for eternity because of Wally. Like, he's like, she's considering staying here because of you. Are you cool with that? Charlie asks Janet about the night of her party, and she says that the watch wasn't a gift, it was a threat. He was reminding her how much was at stake, and she knew that night that she couldn't convince him to abandon the plan, but she hoped she could get him to settle for a slight change of course. She proposed just her going to her scar. She suggested that she go into her own scar for greater periods of time and more often. So instead of like trying to see how the power and the energy would shift when all of them were in their scars together, she suggested she just keep going into her scar for longer periods of time and stuff like that. He told them Janet crossed over to avoid possible outside exposure for them, and being like, where's Janet? Because she just wanted to keep the experiment going of going in and going in and going in and going in. There was a moment, it seemed like going in as often as she was had pierced the veil between realities because the janitor saw Mr. Martin. And that just fueled Mr. Martin even more. She had volunteered to go in there, but everything changed when Mr. Martin realized it was working. There was no turning back. She says that the only thing that kept her going was knowing that it was happening to her, not to them. It was her burden, her idea, and then Maddie showed up and she needed a way out and took it. And that's so sad. The fact that like she had this idea and then he was so dead set on it becoming a reality. Then when she was like, no, it's an idea. We can't do that. That'd be inhumane. He was so insistent on it that she had to like sacrifice herself because she was like, well, I suggested it. I put the idea in his head. I had to take, like, that's so sad. That's not true. It's not your fault that he's, like, cruel and wanted to punish you. I feel so bad for her. Maddie offers Janet her key. She says she doesn't blame Janet if she doesn't want to go into her scar again. It's horrible. Mentions that there was a woman in there, and Janet's like, kind of confused. That's not what her scar was like. And they realize it's Mr. Martin's scar too. The watch is his key, so what's Janet? And then Yuri asks if it can be in person. Mr. Martin is her key, basically, is what they come to the conclusion. And we do see a flash of one of the times that Mr. Martin was pushing Janet to go into her scar, of him putting the watch down. So that was not the key. Mr. Martin was the key. Xavier finally gets a call through. They're like walking because they don't have a car. And they reach Simon, and Xavier tells Simon that Mr. Anderson took Diego's car. Simon's like, I can't get them. You need to find a way to get here. Simon comes back to the cafeteria. Maddie apologizes to him about how much he's been losing himself in all of this. She knows she's asked him for a lot. And then she's like, Mr. Martin is Janet's key. We need him back here so I can get my body back. And Simon says it might be too late. And the episode ends with Mr. Martin in Mr. Anderson's body driving away in Diego's car. Episode 8, the season finale, is called Fire, Talk to Me. Janet and Maddie face each other in the theater, the school theater. They and Simon are in the school theater. Janet needs Mr. Martin to come back. He's not done with her, and Simon has an idea. Nicole, Claire, and Xavier get to Nicole's house. Nicole sent Diego in first to see how mad their mom is. Xavier's more worried about Maddie being mad, about them losing her body again, or about them losing Mr. Anderson and like everything. Nicole has a missed call from Eugene, and she says that they need to reach him. Mr. Martin comes to the school. He's looking for Janet. He goes to the theater, and Janet comes out and says that he found her. Nicole calls Eugene, and he isn't answering because it's the middle of the night. We find out, because Claire asks why, like what he said, that Eugene said that he never believed the official story about the fire. He has evidence, and then Nicole remembers he mentioned his storage unit behind the nursing home. Mr. Martin tells Janet that it's their last chance. They can walk out together. He says he never meant to hurt her. The rest of the ghosts come out of the wings and ask if he meant to hurt them. He made their death so much worse by using and manipulating them. He says all he was trying to do was solve the mystery of this place. It was for their benefit. They tell him he can't take Janet, and he says they can't stop him. He tries to grab Janet, but it's actually Maddie's ghost. And Maddie says, see, nobody likes being tricked. He says they can't stop him, they can't touch him, and Simon comes out and says he can't. They struggle a little bit, they fight, and then Mr. Anderson shows up and yells at Mr. Martin to stop. Janet comes out and tases him. Xavier tells his dad about seeing ghosts, and his dad doesn't believe him. He's like, please, Dad, the last time you didn't believe me was when you thought I hurt Maddie, and I had nothing to do with that. So, like, please believe me. Be a dad right now, not a cop. Xavier then gets a text from Nicole to meet them urgently. At the school, Simon has tied up Mr. Anderson's body. Mr. Anderson talks to Mr. Martin. He says he knows what being a good teacher is. He also talks about how he hates the saying, if you can't do, teach. And I do too. I hate that saying. Because what the fuck does that mean? To be a good teacher, you do have to know how to do something. Like, there are a lot of people who are great at doing things, but they're not good at teaching. Teaching within itself is a skill. But also, like, I think some of the most capable teachers are the ones who are good at the thing they know how to do. If you don't know how to do it, how are you going to teach it? Like, it's not about if you can't do, teach. It's about teaching within itself is something that I could never do. There are a lot of things I can do that I could never teach. So why are we saying that about teachers? But anyways, he says to Mr. Martin that what Mr. Martin did, he could never do. This is his chance to make it right. Mr. Martin says none of it was his fault. He begins to get upset. And in that moment, Simon pushes Mr. Anderson's body into Mr. Anderson's spirit, and he is now back in his body, and Mr. Martin is now a ghost again. Nicole and Claire break into the storage unit, and they start looking through his things. Claire asks if something is going on between Nicole and Xavier, and Nicole's like, that guy that I was texting. Nicole is like, why aren't you laughing at me? Like, I know you're dying to get back to your dumb friends. Claire's like, I am with my dumb friends. They're practically family now. Xavier shows up and then tells them to turn off the light in the storage unit. It'll look suspicious. Simon apologizes to Mr. Anderson and also tells him that the cops think he stole the car that he was driving, because he did. He did steal the car. Mr. Martin didn't in his body. But at the sheriff's office, Maddie's mom is there. She fell asleep at a stop sign, and Xavier's dad brought her in. He brings her a sandwich, tries to get her to sober up, and he asks why she keeps doing this. And she says she doesn't know how to stop. She says she doesn't know she's cut out for it. That the pain it costs to love a person as much as I love Maddie is just not something that I can handle. It's just not something that I can live up to. She says that Maddie doesn't feel like Maddie, and Xavier's like, what do you mean by that? Because remember, Xavier tried to tell his dad about the ghost and everything, and he didn't believe him. Xavier finds a tape in the boxes It's fire coverage, and they put it into a VHS player, and it's an interview with Eugene. Back at the sheriff's office, Maddie's mom is like, why are you asking me? And he's like, something Xavier said. Then Mr. Anderson shows up, and he's like, I did not steal a car, and also I have information about Maddie. You need to come with me. The ghosts take Mr. Martin to the fallout shelter, and he apologizes to them. And Maddie's like, how can you expect us to believe you're on her side now? And he says he's always been on their side. And he says, you have no idea the things that I've done for you. Haven't you ever wondered why so many of us died here? There's more to the school than you understand. Even you, Janet. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Did he kill himself and Janet in order to create some weird experiment, or did he just discover the weirdness of the school and then like use it to his advantage? What do you mean? What do you know about the school? Did you create the weird world and the weird, like, what do you mean? I have so many questions. What the fuck is he talking about? They're all like, what are you talking about? And then he tells Janet he's ready to explain to her, and then the rest will get their explanations too. Like, why not tell all of them at once? What the hell is wrong with him? He says, but first, Janet needs to return to her true self. We see the rest of the interview with Eugene. He says Janet's father is the reason Mr. Martin got fired, and Eugene thinks Mr. Martin started the fire on purpose. He wanted revenge. He wanted to kill her. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he killed Janet to be stuck in some weird ultimate dimension that he's like manipulating in order to like figure out some reality about death and living. And I don't know. There's something there. There's something there that like... It feels like there's more to Mr. Martin than he's letting on. I feel like he set this whole thing up. He unleashed some kind of portal that allowed all of the people to die at the school and be stuck there. But I don't know, because we know people are in the hospital. But like, did all those people die in the hospital? Do they just haunt, like, I wish we knew, and maybe if we had a season 3, we'll find out. But like, is every single ghost in this world, do they get stuck in the place where they died? Or is there something unique about the school because of something Mr. Martin created, or just some kind of force, an evil force in the school that makes them be stuck to the school? Do all those ghosts who Xavier saw in the hospital, can they freely roam? Is it only the ghosts in the school that are stuck to where they died? I have so many questions. Anyways, Xavier gets a text from his dad telling him that Mr. Anderson turned in Diego's car. Janet and Maddie decide it's time. Maddie struggles to say goodbye. Janet apologizes to Maddie, and Maddie forgives her, and then Janet tells Simon to catch her and leaves Maddie's body. Simon catches Maddie's body. The rest of Maddie's friends come down, and Nicole tells Simon that Mr. Martin wanted Janet dead. Mr. Martin then panics and grabs Janet and runs into the fallout shelter and then into the scar. Xavier explains that people think Mr. Martin killed Janet for revenge. Maddie tells Simon that he needs to open the door to the fallout shelter so they can go after Janet and Mr. Martin. Simon tells Xavier to hold Maddie's body while he does that. The ghost chased after Janet and Mr. Martin by going into the scars. Mr. Martin tells, by going into the other scars to lead to that scar, because they can't access Mr. Martin and Janet's scar directly, but they can through the path, which has already been established. Mr. Martin tells Janet the only way they'll get out of there is if she forgives him, and Janet is confused. Why did he want her dead? They all grab their keys. Simon is trying to convince Maddie to go back into her body, but Maddie is conflicted about abandoning her friends while they're chasing this crazy teacher. And the rest of Maddie's friends, the living people, they don't understand what's going on because they can't hear Maddie. So they're like, we need to get her out of here. We need to get an ambulance. She's gonna die. And Simon's like, no, you can't do that. Maddie realizes then that Janet had said that the original idea of the experiment, which she then fended off Mr. Martin from doing by agreeing to go into her scar as often as she did, was about the power that it would hold if they were all in their scars together. So Maddie's like, it's a trap, I have to go after them. As a group, they go into each scar. First, they defeat Rhonda's, then they go into Charlie's through Rhonda's, they go through the path. Meanwhile, Maddie's friends are worried she's literally dying, but Ghost Maddie sees her necklace and realizes that it's her key into her scar. Maddie tells Simon to keep her alive, and she goes into her scar. Her dad is there. Her mom is there drinking. Water begins to fill the room. She can't move. Her dad isn't helping her. The rest of the ghosts are then in Charlie's scar. When he went into his scar earlier in the season, there was a group of kids laughing at him. There's that same group of kids, but they're all just himself. It's not like different people. It's all Charlie. Like a million Charlies laughing at him. They walk into the vending machine, and they are now in Wally's scar on the field. Maddie's friends, meanwhile, in the human world, are freaking out. They think they need to get her help, but Simon is like, her spirit is here, we can't leave the school. And Nicole is like, what good is that if her body is dead? Back in Wally's scar on the field, he sees his casket, his mom, then he sees Maddie. Charlie gets the football, and they exit the scar. Janet and Mr. Martin are in their scars. Their scars are connected. Mr. Martin is haunted by everything that Janet could have accomplished but didn't. So that's why Maddie thought it was Janet's scar, because it's everything that Janet could have accomplished. But that's what Mr. Martin is haunted by. Janet is haunted by her father. Maddie is swimming through her scar because now it's completely filled with water. Her mom says she can't save them. She keeps swimming. Xavier calls an ambulance. The rest of the ghosts are now in Maddie's scar, and Wally pulls Maddie up from the water. They go into Janet and Mr. Martin's joint scar together, and Maddie confronts Mr. Martin. He insists he wasn't trying to hurt anybody. Maddie's friends, meanwhile, are carrying her body to the parking lot to be ready for the paramedics, but Simon is freaking out because her spirit is in the school and they can't go past the boundary line, or Maddie's ghost can't go there and then won't be able to access her body, and she'll, Mr. Martin says the fire was an accident. Maddie says Janet is haunting him, and he will never find peace until she crosses over. He explains the day of the fire. He had nothing else to lose. He had lost his job. He lost his relationship. His fiance, I think Alice, dumped him when he got fired. He had planned to, cause an explosion. He had, turned off the... I don't know what they're called. Oh, my God. The sprinklers or something like that. And he was gonna, blow up the school, I think. But he couldn't go through with it. But then Janet walked in, and she was testing flint torches and lit a flame. He says he would never intentionally have put her in danger. Maddie says he did, though, by locking her in her scar over and over again. And then Janet says she didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve her father for being born in the wrong time. But most of all, she didn't deserve Mr. Martin. An exit appears, and Mr. Martin runs for it, and they stop him. Janet says it's her exit, not his. But she's not ready to leave, though, and the exit disappears. She has unfinished business. They get back to the fallout shelter, but Maddie's body is gone, so they're freaking out. Maddie and the ghosts run to find her body. Simon is distraught about Maddie's body being taken away from her spirit, and he runs into the school to find her. Maddie and the ghosts run. They see her body. It's a tender moment where she looks at them, clearly struggling to leave, and Wally tells her to go, and Maddie runs to her body. Red lights appear all across the school. What the hell was that about? We still don't know. It's the next day, and the ghosts wonder if Maddie made it. Janet says that she needs an explanation from Mr. Martin about the danger that he was talking about, what he was shielding them from, all the weird stuff that he was talking about. So she goes to get answers, and Charlie asks if anyone's seen Wally. We see Wally in the field. He sees the exit. We don't know if he went through it or not. It's not been established that you can see the exit but not go through it, because Janet didn't. So did Wally cross over? I guess we'll get that answer if there's a season 3. Maddie wakes up in the hospital, so we find out she did successfully get into her body. Her friends show up, and she asks where Simon is, and Nicole says that he went back for her, and he doesn't have a phone, but they'll get a hold of him. Xavier apologizes to Maddie, and then we hear a voice say, she's awake, sigh, she's awake. And Xavier replies, and Maddie's like, who are you talking to? And she's like, oh yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, I met your dad, by the way. Janet goes into into the scar to confront Mr. Martin. She tells Mr. Martin she has more questions, and he says he does too. And he's like, what's he doing here? And it pans to Simon. Simon is in the scar, and he asks where Maddie is. And that's how the episode and the season ends. So many questions. Is Simon dead? Is he just able... Did the power of all of them being in their scars at the same time allow Simon the ability to go into the scar? I don't feel like he's dead. I feel like he just has an ability to go he has some kind of pool to go into the scars. I don't think he's dead. I don't. What was Mr. Martin talking about? Did he kill Janet in order to create this weird spirit realm? Are the rules of the ghost world that we know of the school, is that how all ghosts work, or is there some kind of weird ghost world anomalies specifically because of the experiments? Did Mr. Martin find those out, or did he I have so many questions about Mr. Martin's relationship to the ghost world. I have a lot of questions. Did Wally cross over? What's up with Simon? Will Maddie still be able to see the ghosts? So many questions. Will we get answers? Who knows? I don't know if it's been renewed for season 3, but I hope it does. That is where I conclude my deep dive into School Spirit Season 2. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will have a regular episode, just an hour approximately episode next week, just covering some other stuff I've been watching, a lot less organized than this was. And then hopefully the following week or a week after that, I'll have a Yellow Jacket Season 3 deep dive in a very similar format to this. So thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a good time. great time talking about the show. I really enjoy it. It inspired me to start rewatching Ghost Whisperer, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, you'll hear from me next week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please follow me wherever you listen to podcasts if you did. Subscribe on YouTube. Rate and review if you haven't. That would be nice. But thanks so much for tuning in. It means a lot. Hope you have a great week. Thank you.